yes, they robbed and sold out to the merchant shelves. Minutes after they took out from the bottomless pit, my head was made strong by the hand of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs. Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophets while we stand aside and look? Some say it's just a part of it. Got to fulfill the book. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs. It's all I ever have. Redemption songs, redemption songs, redemption songs.
Hey, what's up, troops? Ops Sgt-Maj with Veterans for Freedom. Jeff Evely back with you now on this 14th day of August 2023. The summer is flying by. Got a great show lined up for you today. I'm going to go ahead and say my good mornings to everybody before I get started. Oh, Chris is over on YouTube here. He's saying, I'm not friggin' late this time. Well, that's good, Chris. But push-ups are good for you. So, you should do some push-ups anyway. And we got Ken Papa Squirrel over here saying cheers, giving us the triple slashy. Metzislav is with us as always, saying good morning from Toronto. Darlene is with us as always, saying good morning to all you great Canadian patriots hearts watching from New Brunswick. Thank you for always being with us, Darlene. My homie from Cape Breton, James Q, is here saying good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jeff. Share. Yes, thank you very much, James, for always having the top cover for me on that one. I am the worst guy for not promoting my own stuff, so please share the heck out of this thing. Steve has also given me the top cover saying, sharing gets the world watching. Yes, please, guys, please share this everywhere you can. Cindy is saying good morning to Ken over there. Cindy is with us as always, the most faithful of all V4F watchers. Candace is saying good morning from Chilliwack, BC. Special appreciation to the Westerners for being with us so early. Colleen is with us as always, saying good morning from Ontario. Ontario it is indeed. Oh, here's Cindy's. Good morning, Jeff. Hearts. Morning, everyone. Give us the smiley face. Thanks, Cindy, for always being with us. And I'm about halfway through Kyle Brown's book. Cindy got me Kyle Brown's book, Scapegoat, from Kyle Brown was the whistleblower from the Somalia affair. And I talk about him a lot. Anyway, I'm about halfway through the book right now. So thanks a lot for that. And Chris Stacy is here. Good morning, all. I made it back to Ottawa. Good news, Chris. I'm sorry I couldn't hook up with you, man, while you were down here on the East Coast. It's too bad you didn't make your way all the way out to Cape Breton, but we'll be seeing each other soon, I'm sure. So Melissa is saying, good morning, all, watching from the Courtice, Ontario. Okay, Courtice. I'm not sure where that is, but thanks for being with us over there in Ontario. Nova Scotia Grown 61 says, good morning, peeps. Good morning to you. I don't recognize the name, so thanks for being with us. Looks like maybe a relatively newcomer, or at least a new commenter. And Mother of the Drummers over on YouTube saying, good morning, Jeff. No push-ups for this gal today. /EOFD. Well, that's good news. Thanks for being on time, everybody. I appreciate you. And okay, I think that's good for the good mornings for now. We'll go ahead and dive into this sucker. Let's get into her. Here is our philosophy quote for the day. I seem to have a little bit of a delay here. I'm not sure if you guys are getting the video on this one, but the quote is, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. And that's from The Art of War. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War in the 5th century BC. And like I'm always pointing out, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So that's what we're into right now, as far as I'm able to tell. It's not the kind of thing that we're going to be able to know for certain until years from now. And historians got all their theses defended and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that historians are going to look back on the present moment and say that we were already in World War III. We can see, I think, the evidence of the psychological operation is overwhelming, but it's also financial, it's cultural, it's spiritual, it's everything. So yeah, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. And we saw quite a bit of chaos in Maui late last week. I didn't report on it initially. I like to take a couple of days sometimes when I'm trying to sift through whatever it is that's going on over there. And it's hard to do. It's harder and harder to really do that these days because of the way things are closing down, but they are also opening up in other areas. So yeah, we're in the midst of crisis. There is also opportunity. And so we're seeing the great closing down of the information age, essentially, across the board. But everybody seems to be flocking over to Twitter. And there are some problems over on Twitter there as well, but we can still get the news there. So I'm going to be sticking with that platform. I think I pull from a bunch of different platforms, but mostly Twitter to get the links. And yeah, there is a ton of chaos going on over there in Maui. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, here's our meme for the day. And we have the guy on an old school phone and a black and white photo, and he's saying, hello, people of 2023. Have you colonized Mars yet? Do you have flying cars? What do you mean you don't know what a woman is? Yeah, that's about the state of affairs right now. We've abandoned the way. I think philosophy is the way out here in the West, and that we are the people of philosophy in the West. We are the people of reason. And you know, I've studied some of the other traditions, like in the East, the Analects of Confucius, the Art of War, Sun Tzu, Wang Tzu as well, the Tao, and there's some good stuff in there, but it's not as methodological as it is in the West. The big question goes all the way back to Socrates: is how do you know that? And a lot of the things that I find in the Eastern traditions are kind of like proclamations, good advice, a lot of it, I think, but it lacks that method that we see in the West. It's not as perhaps open to interrogation as a lot of the ideas that we present in the West are. And that is kind of that is, I think, what makes us great. What really drives the Enlightenment is that ability to interrogate claims and how everything is always on the table, open to revision. So at least it has been traditionally. It's not during a fourth turning, the crisis era that we presently find ourselves in. And if you're just tuning in, a fourth turning is a crisis era that we enter into every 4 generations. Previous one being World War II, and before that it was the American Civil War, and before that it was the American Revolution, and it just continues on and on all the way back to the Garden of Eden. So, yeah, and the first casualty in war, of course, is the truth. I think that's George Orwell who said that one. Okay, and here is where we get our title for the day. This is Liz Churchill, and she's tweeting out, holy S, this is real. Best Buy does not want white people in any management positions. You know what to do, warriors. So it looks like Best Buy got woke and now they're going broke. We hope. Let's keep our fingers crossed for that. That is, unfortunate. They got a lot of good products and stuff like that, but hey, it is what it is. I mean, this is where the battle space is. It's also financial. Like I say, it's cultural, it's cyber, it's financial, and our corporations are essentially being turned against us. Co-opted. All our institutions are, especially the corporations. But she's tweeting out this graphic here of a news article that says, "No whites allowed. Best Buy management leadership program open only to, quote, people of color." Yep. So that's what's going on out there with Best Buy. So anyway, I expect a boycott. Okay. Here is Ivan, and he's tweeting out, "Disturbing new footage from Maui fires shows what allegedly happened." And he's showing let's go ahead and see. So if you're just listening, this looks like a big laser blast coming out of the sky here that kind of blows something up and it starts a fire. This is something that was going on around. A lot of people have been talking about this anyway on Twitter when it's going on with what's happening with the Maui fires. Now we saw here in Canada, we had the Nova Scotia fires, the Quebec fires, the Ontario fires, the Alberta fires. Skipped right over New Brunswick for some reason. Skipped right over Saskatchewan for some reason. And climate change seems to know where the 49th parallel is, because all those climate change fires didn't extend into the United States. And climate change is really good at finding highways alongside which to set fires. Obviously it's arson. I'm looking at the Maui fires like, yeah, they're probably arson, but a lot of people are talking about these direct energy weapons. And I wanted to show this particular clip because it has the same problem for me that Star Trek always had. Like when they're showing the Enterprise side view and it's firing the phasers, which I guess are some sort of advanced lasers, or at least that's what it would seem to imply. And you can always see this beam of light, bam, it's hitting something. And that's what we're seeing here in this video. Is it's a profile. We're off to the side and there's this laser, photon, direct energy weapon, something like that. And I'm not sure exactly what they're saying a direct energy weapon is, but it sounds a lot like it's electromagnetic energy that is focused into a beam, like we see here. Electromagnetic energy is basically just light. Visible light is just a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum that is visible to the human eye, but it's fundamentally, it's all the same stuff across the board, whether you're talking about microwaves or gamma rays. Like, it's the same thing. It's just that what we consider to be light is the narrow band of electromagnetic energy that is visible to the human eye. So we're using visible light, it looks like, because we can see this particular beam. And the problem that I have with this video is the same that I have with Star Trek, which is, if it's a laser and you're sitting off to the side, a direct energy weapon, electromagnetic energy, a laser, and you're watching it from the side, you can't see the light. You can't see the energy, whatever it is, because it's only going in one direction. Now, we're used to seeing light in an omnidirectional pattern, like sunlight, like a candlelight, like a flame, and light from even any emitter, light from a light bulb tends to radiate in all directions. Well, it does. It necessarily, it's omnidirectional. It radiates in all directions. And in a flashlight, you use reflectors in order to direct the energy in one direction, but it's going to a lot of it is going to spew out in different directions. But if you're talking about a direct energy weapon, you're talking about a laser, it's only going in one direction. So if we're sitting to the side of it, we can't see it. We're not going to be able to see it because it's not coming towards us. It's only going in one direction. And if we could see it, then we would get fried as well. So, yeah, I'm not buying the direct energy weapon thesis right now. I think it's probably just arson, like I have been saying about some of the other fires as well. So, but here is some real footage, and this definitely looks suspicious. I wouldn't say that it looks like direct energy weapons, but there's a lot of wind and stuff like this. There might be some accelerants used, so let's have a look.
What? John, get out of there! Get out of there! No, I've never seen it like this either. What is going on? What? What? John!
All right, there we go. And Chris is saying they don't look like this though. They are hard to see. Some use heat to destroy targets, drones, missiles. Others use light, but you disrupt sensors and jam systems. So, yeah, I mean, I know that there are like some lasers and some direct energy weapons, even like mountable on like a Humvee or something like that. But I'm just saying some of the videos that are coming out here on Twitter don't really support this idea. Like I said, you wouldn't be able to see the beam if that were the case. So always important to take a critical mind to these things. So and Michael is saying high wattage EMP. Yeah, I don't know that would cause a fire. And if it's a high wattage EMP, it would take out like the power grid and any electrical devices as well. So yeah, I'm skeptical. I'm skeptical that this has anything to do with EMPs or any direct energy weapons or anything like that. Susan is here saying, I'm late for a very important date. All right, that's okay. You can do your push-ups. So 10 push-ups for being late. But Susan is here. Thank you very much for always being with us. Okay, and here is another little piece of footage here from La Juana, minutes before the fire started, and how fast things changed. So. We've got a lot of wind, a lot of smoke.
We're going to try and take on Ret'd.
No, that's
fire everywhere.
yeah. Slowly do.
Can't really see a lot of flames here, but there's a lot of smoke.
This is wild. Baby, don't touch it, baby, don't touch it.
Hold on, report, get passports and all that.
Really dense smoke here. They can barely see the vehicle in front of them. It's only 1 or 2 car lengths ahead, and you can barely see it.
Oh my God.
Fire all over the place. Okay, and Susan is here saying, they say La Juana was set to become a smart city and nobody wanted it. Yeah, that I buy. Now, that is something that I think is definitely worthy of further investigation there, because I have seen that as well, where they were talking about bringing in the smart city. Nobody wants it, so, well, you'll own nothing and be happy one way or the other. That seems to be what's going on. And here is Ivan. He's saying, "I'm already trying to think of ways to acquire the land and put in workforce housing." So this is the governor, Josh Green. So here we go. There are a couple of different ways that you can read this, but Ivan is saying Maui are in fear of getting robbed and their land of their land completely. Okay, so here we go.
Governor Josh Green had to say, along with the FEMA director, about preserving Lahaina moving forward.
I'm already thinking about ways for the state to acquire that land so that we can put it into workforce housing, to put it back into families, or to make it open spaces in perpetuity as a memorial to people who were lost. We want this to be something that we remember after the pain passes as a magic place. And Lahaina will rebuild. The tragedy right now is the loss of life. The buildings can be rebuilt over time. Even the banyan tree may survive. But we don't want this to become a clear space where then, yes, people from overseas just come and decide they're going to take it. The state will take it and preserve it first.
Okay, so he's saying that they're looking at ways for the state to acquire the land. Couple of different ways you could interpret that as he's trying to protect the land for people in Hawaii from being scooped up by foreigners, this kind of thing. And the other way, of course, is that they're trying to that they're in on the deal to bring in the smart cities and cage us all up like rats out there. And well, not us, but the people of Hawaii. Let me see. And Susan is also saying there are numerous celebrities who own massive properties in Maui, including Oprah. Miraculously, her hundreds of acres were not affected. I have been seeing that as well. I've seen that claim out there. I didn't do a deep dive on it, but something to watch. I think it's something we should be very suspicious of these fires. Definitely looks like another case of arson. And here is Truth Poll, and they're saying escaping from La Huena during the fires, extremely graphic. So trigger warning. No, we don't give trigger warnings around here, folks.
How come I got to call you? No reception, no reception. You know. It says SOS, I believe. Oh, God damn it! Let's go! Let's go to there! No! Yeah, go, bro. Yo, go! Come on, baby. Come on, baby. What is this? Let's go! Damn, it's hot. Let's go down. Go down. Quick. Oh my God, dude. We're almost to the end of the deal. We're almost to the smoke shop. You made it. We got a line on the road. Oh my God, man. Somebody's down right now. Somebody's down. Just go there. We cannot do nothing for her. Oh my God. Just go. We cannot do nothing for her. What the fuck, dude? Just go. Go, people, go. People aren't down.
Okay, so as you can see, fire all around these people. There's vehicles that are just ablaze too, and I always find that suspicious. Like, you know, it's a bit ironic, I think, that all these buildings and vehicles are ablaze, but people are pointing out, you know, that some of the trees are left standing. Anyway. It's hard to say. Like, it would take a pretty coordinated campaign of arson, the likes of which I think we've seen here in Canada. We showed the footage here, the satellite imagery of the Quebec fires and how they all just kind of went up at the exact same time. So again, this looks like another attack, I would say. Okay. Here is Tokyo Rosie, and she's tweeting out, "It cannot be enough to allow Trudeau to step down or to lose the next election. He can't be allowed to simply ride off into the sunset after what he's done to our democracy. He needs to be investigated and, if necessary, prosecuted." And she's tweeting out a Globe and Fail editorial. It says, "Enough stalling. We need an inquiry into Chinese election interference." Delay in calling the inquiry will mean that the next election will unfold in the same environment as its predecessors and subject to the same foreign interference. Now, Globe and Fail, they've got their gun in my face and their hand in my pocket. They're getting my money, regardless of whether or not I actually support them because of the bailout. And they still want more money. They still expect me to buy a subscription, even though they're publicly funded. So I can't access this article. And obviously, I'm not giving any more of my money than I'm already forced to give them because they're propaganda and they need to fail, I think. So, but here's the National Post and their National Compost, and they are reporting National Compost View. Trudeau's free-range approach to criminals has sentenced our cities to lawlessness. The latest Statistics Canada figures support the growing feeling among Canadians that our cities are no longer safe. Whatever weakens the West is true. That's the mantra, folks. And I talk about this like the art of war. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. So whatever weakens the West is true. And that's what we see with a lot of this unmanaged, unmitigated immigration. They're bringing criminals in from all over the world. And then they get free range. They get the catch and release policies that Obama first implemented in the United States. There's this kind of copycat playbook happening between progressives in Canada and progressives in the United States. And all of it is to weaken us as a society, to make it more dangerous and make us less prosperous. And that is kind of the supreme art of war. That's what chapter 13 in the Art of War is all about. It's called The Use of Spies, and it's all about elite capture. You capture the elites of the state, turn the state against the people will turn against the state, pit all the different ethnicities off each other, and now they're inventing these new groups to pit against each other in a lot of cases. So, and we'll just sort of implode. The state will implode on its own because, the lack of economic activity and a lot of expenses going towards, rebuilding things. And I suspect lawsuits in the near future as well. So here's the article. The recent cabinet shuffle should have been an opportunity for the Liberals to reset their priorities and take action on issues affecting the lives of Canadians, notably crime. Unfortunately, in the same breath as our new Justice Minister, Arif Virani, pledged to address the growing sense of insecurity among Canadians, he downplayed the problem, saying it's unlikely that crime is becoming a bigger problem than it used to be. It's easy to pass off a series of high-profile murders and random attacks that have been witnessed recently as anecdotal evidence, like the two notable videos of men bleeding out in the wake of knife attacks, one in Vancouver and another in Toronto. The former shows a father dying in front of a coffee shop. The latter shows a bleeding man running away from his attacker in a subway car, screaming, only to be cornered. Fortunately, he survived. By themselves, these graphic recordings are merely anecdotal evidence of rising crime and urban disorder. Statistics show, however, that each video forms the tip of a very real iceberg of lawlessness that began growing after 2014. In the most recent data drop by Statistics Canada revealed a number of haunting figures. The homicide rate has risen for the fourth consecutive year and is now at its highest level since 1992, largely due to more gang violence. The rate of violent crime has risen for the eighth consecutive year. Per capita victims of violent crime involving firearms has increased 60% since 2013. Fraud is roughly twice as prevalent as it was 10 years ago, and extortion is 5 times higher. Rates for some types of violent crimes, serious sexual assaults, for example, and property crime remain stable, but overall, the evidence shows that Canada is a more violent place than it was a decade ago. In many cities, the situation is becoming untenable. Toronto's sharp rise in crime has residents on edge. A survey released earlier this year by Abacus Data showed that crime was one of Torontonians' top concerns. The city transit system has experienced a dramatic spike in crime that includes stabbings, swarmings, arsons, and firework detonations. In Vancouver, persistent theft and violence has some businesses giving up entirely. In Edmonton, stabbings are now a periodic occurrence at transit stops. Homeless encampments, meanwhile, are popping up so fast the city can't even keep up on its risk assessments. Reports from Newfoundland, which experienced one of the steepest rises in crime last year, revealed a growing sense of fear and abandonment among those living in St. John's downtown core. The key event that occurred around the time that violent crime began to rise was the election of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who promised a soft on crime approach and leniency toward offenders. Instead of locking criminals in cages, he intended to use a free range approach, except when it comes to political dissidents, as we can see from the awful example of the Coots 4. Trudeau entered office with a warm reception from the experts on call at the CBC, who referred to his tough on crime approach of his conservative predecessors as "quote unquote" incoherent and drawing from an quote ideological grab bag of repression and meanness, close quote. Under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, laws were introduced to create mandatory minimum sentences for specific offenses, creating democratically set floors on criminal punishment and making it harder for judges to sentence certain offenders to house arrest. The Parole Board of Canada was given more latitude to consider the severity of a criminal's actions when deciding whether to grant release. The ability to pardon serious offenders was eliminated. Harper also made it easier for officers to arrest offenders who seemed to be breaching their release conditions, and it was made more difficult for those who had committed multiple murders to be paroled. The general aim was to keep violent and repeat offenders off the streets and behind bars. The necessity of such measures is now clear for all to see, as municipalities across the country witness large numbers of crimes committed by a small number of chronic offenders, while murders and other violent offenses are committed by criminals who are out on bail or a statutory release. Oh, I have a problem with my Rumble broadcast here, folks. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to fix that. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that, folks, over on Rumble. I see there's somebody's asking, is there a glitch in the Matrix this morning, or is it just me? No, it's not you. I had a little problem here, it looks like, with the Rumble feed, but I got it sorted out now, I think. Go ahead and drop me a comment over there on Rumble, folks. Just let me know if you're getting me now. Okay, so okay. Although many of the Harper-era criminal justice reforms were eventually struck down by the courts, the Trudeau Liberals have consistently gone a step further, introducing laws to repeal a host of mandatory minimum sentences, instructing police and courts to favor release over detention, mandating that Correctional Services Canada place inmates in, quote, the least restrictive environment, close quote, and repealing other conservative reforms that the courts had not taken exception to. Yeah, and that last line there, the least restrictive environment, that's what resulted in the transfer of Canada's most notorious serial killer, Paul Bernardo, from the maximum security to the medium security facility. So, yeah, these are the kinds of things that we're seeing. The fallout of these kinds of policies. Instead of pushing back against the court's loose approach towards granting bail, the Liberals codified it into law. Instead of ensuring drug addicts get the treatment they need while preventing them from harming others, they permitted the decriminalization of illicit drugs and even hand them out for free, which has fueled the black market. Justice Minister Arif Virani believes that rising crime is just an illusion, but for anyone with a view of their city streets, it's all too real. Until our leaders recognize the increase in crime that has become painfully obvious to the vast majority of Canadians, our citizens will continue to descend into lawlessness. We may have a new justice minister, but Canadians should not expect more justice. Yeah, okay, it looks like the Rumble feed is working now, guys. Okay, sorry about that over there on Rumble. That is the priority channel. I'm trying to steer everybody on to it over there, and it seems like I end up with the most glitches for that one. Okay, here is Rob Moore, and he says the new Liberal Justice Minister is telling Canadians that the rising rate of violent crime in Canada is all in their heads. These Liberals are dangerously out of touch with reality. Only Conservatives will bring home safe streets. Yeah, not only conservatives, but anyway, here is a good little video clip here coming out from Rob Moore. So this is the quote from Virani, and he says, I think that empirically it's unlikely Canada is blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that was the quote that he used. Empirically, it's unlikely, but as we saw in the previous article, they're citing the statistics. So empirically, it's a reality, according to StatsCan. Okay, so it's empirically unlikely that Canada is becoming less safe.
Violent robberies up 15%. Homicides up 8%. Part of a nationwide crime trend that made 2022 the worst year for violence since 2007, according to Statistics Canada.
Also of note, the murder rate. It is up for a fourth straight year by 10%, with police reporting 874 homicides across Canada in 2022.
Gang violence accounted for a quarter of Canadian murders, most of those committed with handguns.
The crimes that are happening are more egregious and are hurting people more. Aggravated assaults, assault causing bodily harm, violent offenses.
I'm not safe in my city, in my home.
According to exclusive Ipsos polling for Global News, nearly 6 in 10 Canadians feel there has been more violence in their communities since the COVID-19 pandemic began.
And they're just showing all kinds of different articles here with the headlines. Lily, StatsCan numbers show crime and shooting spike under Trudeau. Gunter, liberal bail reforms directly tied to soaring violent crime rates. Well, duh. Yeah, that's exactly what's happening. It says, after 8 years of Trudeau, Canadians are less safe. Conservatives will bring home safe streets. There you go. So, sponsored by the Conservative Party of Canada. And of course, I have my criticisms for the Conservative Party of Canada, but at least they're not the Liberals. They would keep us safer. Okay, speaking of speaking of crime, here's Donald Best, and he's saying, I had Donald on the program there last week, actually, so go and check that out. It's called The Best Among Us Serve, and we talked quite a bit about the Helen Gruss case there. She is the Ottawa police detective who is being charged for investigating a potential vaccine link to a spike in sudden infant death syndrome in the Ottawa area. And Donald is tweeting out, hello, all. I've arrived in Ottawa for the trial of Ottawa Police Detective Helen Gruss, which starts on Monday, August 14th for 5 scheduled days. I'll be on tomorrow's morning show with Jason Levine at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. See you then. Here's an article that lays it all out. And I read that article. That's from donaldbest.ca. Here on the program last week, and we discussed it with Donald when I had him on. But just so everybody's tracking, this is the week that Helen Gruss is on trial. Like he says, it's 5 days, so it's starting today and running till Friday. And keep an eye on Donald's Twitter for the updates. And this is the article here that he's linking to. Detective Helen Gruss proven correct to suspect vaccine harm to breastfeeding infants. Will Ottawa police drop the misconduct charge? So great article. We read it here last week. And like I said, I discussed it with Donald. Go and check that out on his website. And we'll be watching him for we'll be watching him for the updates. And Steve is saying, Donald is the best Donald we have. He is the best Donald we have. We don't seem to have a great Donald Trump in Canada. Okay. And Tawny over on Rumble is saying, all good now, Jeff. So thanks, Tawny, for giving me the update. And sorry about that on Rumble, guys. It is going to be our primary platform here. That's what we're trying to drive. Okay. Here's the National Compost again. And this is Peter MacKay. He was the Minister of National Defense for quite a while we were in Afghanistan. He was a pretty good minister. Not bad. I have my criticisms for Peter MacKay. I think he really cocked out in the last few years when it comes to running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. I know he was running away from Rebel News and stuff like this. So, that was very disappointing to see. But I remember him as the minister. I met him on the plane one time. I think I was actually traveling to deployment or coming from my leave or something like that. And he's got a real firm handshake. And he beat the pants off our chief of defense staff. That was Lawson on the new force test, the PT test. So he's a pretty fit guy, and he's very successful in his career. And he was the guy who dated Belinda Stronach when she was in Parliament, and there was all that drama around that. I think they broke up after she left the Conservatives for the Liberals or something like that. So anyway, Peter was a pretty good minister. I think he's kind of lost his edge in the last few years. He's still kind of playing the game, I think, and he doesn't realize that it's not politics as usual anymore. But here's an article. He says, "The urgent need to fix Canada's military and how to do it. Advice from a former defense minister to the one just starting." With the recent federal cabinet shuffle, Canada has a new defense minister as Bill Blair takes the reins. Oh, God. It is worth taking stock of where the Department of National Defense finds itself and the headwinds Blair faces in his new role. It is critically important to examine what opportunities exist to revitalize arguably the most important file of any government. It is the most important file. The challenges facing DND and the Canadian Armed Forces are as daunting and complex as they are numerous. Most recently, Canada has been maligned by international partners, perhaps especially the United States, for failing to reach the NATO spending target. Adding, well, I don't know if that's a malignment, but yeah, it's a criticism, and it's valid criticism. Like, if we're going to be part of NATO, then we should live up to our obligations. Adding insult to injury were the reports of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau telling NATO officials behind closed doors that we, quote, never will, close quote, reach that goal, only to contradict himself a few weeks later at a NATO meeting in Vilnius by agreeing to see 2% of GDP spending on defense as a floor, not a ceiling. Canada's behavior has spread confusion and mistrust among allies and gives glee to our adversaries. It is important to look beyond that headline, the headline number, and accept that even if Canada were to invest 2% of its GDP in defense, we are currently pegged at 1.29%, according to the most recent NATO figures. There is no guarantee that we have a system capable of managing, let alone investing an additional $20 billion into defense funding annually. In my experience, there has been a distinct lack of coordination and communication between the departments responsible for military procurement, Industry Canada, Public Works and Procurement, and National Defense, all overseen by the Treasury Board, often work at cross purposes and in silos. These woes have long plagued Canada's approach to defense spending from boots to battleships. It would not be a stretch to call Canada's defense procurement system among the worst in the West, having bedeviled successive governments for years. The problem is the public service. It's the management. With the failure to get new and necessary equipment to our troops in a timely and efficient fashion, Ottawa has fostered a crisis of faith in Canada as a defense partner. Our allies and adversaries alike have called us out as a laggard and free riders. As a laggard and a free rider. Perhaps more troubling, our men and women in uniform are acutely aware that Canada has underinvested in their success, which has led to serious morale and personnel deficits. Most troubling, we have to put them in harm's way at times at elevated risk due to improper equipment, uniforms, and personal protection. Well, that has been the case for my entire adult life. I mean, they sent us into Afghanistan with green uniforms and told everybody that green was better in Afghanistan in the desert because most of the fighting was happening at night and green is harder to see at night. And I remember like people would go around the office repeating this line that came from Minister Art Eggleton at the time. And I was like, should we tell the rest of our allies that? Like, shouldn't we tell other countries they should be wearing green instead of arid camo? And then, of course, they eventually did procure the arrowed camo that we needed for, proper camouflage in that environment. And there was the Iltis Jeep fiasco. I don't know exactly how many Canadian Armed Forces members had to die in the boomer hand-me-down Iltis Jeep before they finally ponied up the dough to get those light armor vehicles that we needed to counter the IED threat that we are now selling to tyrannical regimes in Saudi Arabia. And, of course, we've sent all of our equipment over to Ukraine regardless. But back to the article. Ottawa has fostered a crisis of faith. What young pilot dreams of flying fighter aircraft that are almost older or are older than their parents? How can we tolerate asking them to deploy to a desert combat mission in forest green uniforms, or more recently require them to buy their own helmets or feed themselves? It is truly falling well below what any G7 countries its citizens should ever tolerate when it comes to the treatment of those who put their lives on the line to protect us. Yeah, it's very clear to the people in uniform out there that they're just being exploited. Undeniably, there are also other issues that we are facing as a nation, some of an urgent nature, but we are now at an inflection point. Ottawa must not allow our nation's defense readiness to continue to decline, putting all that we have accomplished and all that we hold dear at risk. A new approach is needed. If the new Minister of Defense is listening, I have a few suggestions he might consider to settle into his role. The first thing that must be done is to call for a détente. The government and opposition must come together to work on depoliticizing defense generally and procurement specifically. This doesn't mean that the government should be absolved of responsibility or legitimate shortcomings, nor that the opposition stop asking questions, but rather all parties should agree that the fundamentals of defense and procurement must have continuity between governments and must be defined by inter-party cooperation rather than political competition. That's a little bit platitudinous there, Peter. If defense can be depoliticized, I mean, it's obvious, obviously, but if defense can be depoliticized, even in part, much more progress can be made toward cutting bureaucratic processes designed to insulate politicians, allowing us to reduce costly delays and finally get our men and women in uniform the tools and resources they most need much more quickly than is currently possible. The spectacular failures of the Sea King helicopter, Victoria-class submarine, and ongoing and escalating CF-18 fighter replacement programs costing billions and causing long delays for short-term political gain, highlighting this pressing need. Partisan political games as broken promises have devastating implications for those who risk their lives in the CAF. In defense and procurement, if defense and procurement can be depoliticized, we can consider what the government ought to do with a freer hand. First things first, Canada needs certain interoperable capabilities in order to continue or to contribute to our international obligations. We must be able to perform the task required of us in the air, on land, at sea, and in space. And we must be able to do so in a cooperation with our most important partners and allies. As a middle power with limited resources, this means that we must pursue joint builds for many of our major capabilities, such as the F-35, and must also be assertive in participating in international training exercises and supply chains for future capabilities. Refueling capabilities across all elements, as well as spare parts, ammunition, and training, are part of that interoperability puzzle. An aspect of defense that has been allowed to atrophy has been our manufacturing capabilities. While Canada will never be able to develop all of its necessary capabilities domestically, and while we should not attempt to embrace complete autonomy, we are not helping our allies if we lack the ability to meaningfully contribute to the manufacturing to produce crucial capabilities and material necessary for collective defense. Consider the shortage of artillery munitions that Ukraine is contending with. Canada could help fill that gap, but doing so requires significant investments in domestic production. So yeah, I'm glad he throws the Ukraine in there so we can kind of see where it really stands. That's the issue, is that we're not doing enough for Ukraine. Meanwhile, the people in uniform, you got General Rick Hillier going on the TV and telling everybody, yeah, we should send our young people off to die in the F-18s. In East Europe, yeah, our F-18s are up to the task. No, they're not. They're not stealth. Everybody else is flying stealth. You're basically a beacon in the sky, and none of our allies are going to want us flying with them because that's going to attract attention to any of them who might be flying in formations with us. So back to the article. And to that end, Canada must strive to seize upon the comparative advantages. What we as a nation might lack in domestic air combat platform manufacturing, we can make up for it in our burgeoning tech sector. Satellite imagery of the LiDAR technology, ground and ocean-based sensors, search and rescue, artificial intelligence, drones, and more are all capabilities where Canada can not only develop value for our military, but indeed may be able to manufacture goods and services that benefit our partners and allies more generally. Surely some buys will have to come off the shelf from allied countries, but focusing on areas where we have advantages while not neglecting areas which must have some self-sufficiency, the government can make smart investments and yield benefits with respect to defense and the economy. The F-35, I think, is a pretty good example of how the politics got in the way because whatever Harper did, we're not doing that. That was the the Trudeau regime's tacked on this thing, and they canceled the F-35 project, and now it's back on, and we're not going to have it until years after World War III is already concluded. And people die in these situations. They're putting their lives at risk, and you can't even buy the equipment to support them. But the thing about the F-35 is the interoperability. That's what he's honing in on here too, and I don't think he's doing a very good job of really highlighting that. But all our allies are on the same platform, and we have in the supply system we use what's called a NATO stock number. So I mean the technology, the spare parts, everything that you need to support the F-35, like it's going to be available like NATO wide to all our partners. And we had the opportunity to get in on the ground floor and follow in lockstep with our allies in terms of all the upgrades and maintenance and stuff like that. So it's not just a mishmash cornucopia of, Band-Aid solutions and stuff like that. The maintenance program, all those things would have been universal to all. And so that would really make it like a very interoperable piece of equipment and put us in a good position to stay in lockstep with our allies. But now, we're a laughing stock basically. And this really weakens us as a country. This makes us very vulnerable. Okay, and he says, similarly with major purchases and economic opportunities that come from such things as Navy vessels and subsea autonomous vessels, Canada has a choice to make. Do we continue to pursue domestic builds, which have significant economic benefits and the ability to be tailor-made to the needs of the Royal Canadian Navy, or do we pursue off-the-shelf options, such as purchasing the older U.S. vessels? My own view is that Canada is nurturing shipbuilding and marine technology expertise that we would be fools not to continue to invest in. But we should consider the broader implications and pressing need for niche capabilities such as future submarines, or explore lease-to-own options as we did with joint support supply ships. There is a place for a sole source when an urgent need arises, and as was the case when the RCN faced an inability to refuel at sea. That was in reference to the Mark Norman fiasco, where we were almost left without Navy, so they did the sole source contracting for the refuelers. And when the Liberal government was going to quash that, the Mark Norman, who was authorized to deal with industry directly, went to industry and said, "You guys better call your lobbyists before this whole thing gets crushed and we don't have a Navy that can deploy anymore. We have a Coast Guard that needs to come back to shore to refuel." But I think that McKay is really kind of honing on the political component. It's like he views the military as a kind of political pawn, and as you can see, he's saying like basically it should be kind of this cash cow that supports our industry. But anyway, I think that's about enough for that one there. I'll read one more paragraph. This is effectively a question of what the model of military we want to develop, one like that of Australia, which is a sharp, powerful, domestically fit for purpose, but smaller in size, one or more similar to which Poland is building, a robust military with significant mass of personnel and equipment prepared for major conventional conflict. There are benefits to both approaches, and neither is inherently superior. The best approach is based on what we want our military to be able to achieve. The CAF's current mandate of a home game, North America, defense, and one or more missions abroad demands the latter model. Okay. I mean, it's ironic, I think, the urgent need to fix Canada's military and how to do it. And he's talking about depoliticizing things. And he seems to be talking about Canada's military as being kind of just a pawn for politicians. And here is the Western Standard. But like we are in a really hurting way here. We have decimated the ranks. And we don't have the equipment to support everybody that's left. We're having to buy our own equipment when we deploy, alongside our partners who have Canadian-made equipment, standard issue to them, and we got to buy that ourselves, or our troops do. I still think of myself as being in there. Okay, so here is the Western Standard. Slobodane, former Snowbird Sea King pilot, forced out of the CAF for going maskless during COVID-19. So if you want to know like what we need to do to build back our military, I mean, I've been hearing since the first town hall that I ever went to in 2001 with a commanding officer, I've been hearing this line, rebuilding trust in the chain of command. And I don't think the trust in the chain of command has ever been so low. And it has been the case since, especially since the Somalia affair of 1993, that since the boomers took over the chain of command and the chief of defense staff position in particular, it's been untrustworthy. It's not the chain of command. It's not the military. It's the boomer generation. Okay. We need to flush the senior leadership, get some fresh blood in there, let the Gen Xers take a turn on the stick here. The boomers just won't let it go. Not anywhere, nowhere across the board are they going to let go of the power, the precious, because they just can't let it go. And of course, they politicize the military and make it all about their own personal careers and getting in good with the big guys so they can get those cushy jobs afterward. And we've just been seeing this going on for decades now. So if you want to rebuild trust in the chain of command, we need to get rid of the untrustworthy boomers. Okay, so here's the article. Quote, "Am I being detained?" Close quote, asked former snowbird pilot Captain Bart Postma as he stood before his commanding officer in October of 2020. The since retired RCAF flight instructor, then with 15 Wing Moose Jaw, was confused about conflicting orders. Lieutenant Colonel Reich Erickson, commander of the 2 Canadian Forces Flying Training School, had just told Postma she'd never again let him fly an aircraft. She ordered him to leave the building. Postma was also told he couldn't exit without following the order. He was hauled in for not obeying. When he said he'd leave, despite it being winter, he was forced to get his coat and car keys. He was forbidden to get his coat and car keys. What offense did Postma, who flew Sea King helicopters for a decade, now Canadair CT-114 Tudor jets that reach 750 kilometers an hour top speed with the Snowbird Aerobatics flight team in 2014-15 and served as a flight instructor, commit to deserve such a shabby treatment? That's pretty interesting, actually. He flew the Sea King and then he actually changed platforms to fixed wing Tudor jets that he flew with the Snowbird. So interesting character. That's probably why he's a captain, because he switched occupations. Captain is the working rank. It's kind of the promotion that it's like corporal. Those are the free promotions. As long as you get your haircut and show up on time, then you'll get it. But anyway, this guy is a pilot. I think he's just a hardcore pilot who never took any interest in the politics required to move up the chain of command. So I think he just wanted to stay flying. Okay. He refused to wear a mask during the Canadian Armed Forces COVID-19 mandate crackdown. Masks weren't required to be worn in 15 Wing Moose Jaw classrooms, just in the hallway to get them to them. This is one example of the nonsensical, erratic, and bullying mandate enforcement that destroys or impedes hundreds of careers. Postma, a 24-year vet and married father of 3, was forced to take early retirement to save his pension. The RCAF, facing an estimating 2,500 shortage of members and reservists, lost a skilled pilot instructor who wanted to stay a few years longer. And that's like a force divider, I guess, because we talk about force multipliers. This guy's a force multiplier when he's got the level of experience that he does. He goes into a classroom and he makes, vast swaths of new pilots. He trains the next generation of pilots. And so we've lost that capability. We can't generate force anymore. We can't generate pilots. This is a force multiplier that's been lost. So these policies are something like a force divider, I think. Okay. The CAF's COVID-19 enforcements were recently deemed a violation to members' charter rights by the Military Grievance External Review Committee. It recommended actions taken against members be rescinded and that they pursue their rights in court. And they are. Some 330 former and serving members are involved in a $500 million class action lawsuit led by St. Albert lawyer Catherine Christensen with Valor Law. Catherine is a friend of the program. Anybody who's a regular watcher will be familiar with her. So the lawsuit, centered on abuse of power and process, wants the chain of command held accountable. It seeks damages for lost income, pensions, and promotions. Hundreds more from all military branches are launching another lawsuit. Postma joined the lawsuit. Quote, I was ready to go off grid. It was time to hunker down and try to live a good life, start a garden, learn to hunt, learn to fish. I was demoralized to the point where I thought it's too far gone because people weren't standing up, close quote. Yeah, that's pretty much where I am too. I moved back here to Cape Breton. I got my little fixer-upper house to keep me busy, and I had my quad and a dirt bike and stuff like that. And I am just not doing any of that. I'm still engaged in this ideological battle space here. So it's all good. I don't know what the hell else I'd be doing because I keep saying I haven't missed a war yet. Back to the article. Never underestimate the righteous grit of an Ontario farm boy who literally rose to great heights serving his country and learned the, quote, honor and privilege, close quote, of becoming a snowbird's pilot. Quote, now that I see there's an opportunity for justice, I'm on board. It's not money. Our major thing is to get justice for what our government did to us, close quote. Quote, we've got to stop apologizing. All of us demoralized people. It's taboo to talk about any of this. We have to talk about this. What happened to us over the last 3 years is aberrant. It's egregious, close quote. Others with 15-wing moose jaw were, quote, forced into the fight, backed into the corner, close quote. Quote, those guys took the lead and launched a lawsuit. I'm proud of the guys who stayed behind at the school and are fighting, close quote. When Postma was summoned by Erickson, he requested religious accommodation. His research, since proven accurate, determined masks weren't effective. It went against his Christian faith as, quote, an affront to God to participate in a lie, close quote. Quote, it was so bizarre that they were forcing everybody to take part in this lie of cloth masks protecting everybody. It was pure insanity, close quote. Quote, immediately out of the gate, the CO said, I'm denying your request. You're denied religious accommodation at this unit because we can't do it here. For that reason, I can't allow you to fly. I'll never allow you to fly an aircraft. Now you're going to have to be posted out. You can't work at this unit, but maybe somebody else will accommodate you, close quote, said Postma. It's all the statement of claim. It's all in the statement of claim. Chief Warrant Officer Bill Doman, quote, slapped 3 masks down on the table, close quote, beside Postma. He ignored them. Quote, the CO said I had to be in a mask in the building or I would have to leave immediately. That was followed with I wasn't going to be allowed to leave the building unless I put the mask on. After a bit of silence, I asked, am I being detained? Close quote. His quote unquote reasonable direct supervisor said he'd get Postma's things. Postma had to wait by the exit door like a naughty child. What followed was, quote, a twisted ball of insane logic, close quote. When Postma, who then worked remotely teaching ground school courses for a time, suggested numerous solutions to allow him to fly. Quote, it was a whack-a-mole about reasons she was denying requests. It was impossible to keep track of, close quote. Postma could walk directly from his car to whatever aircraft he was assigned on the flight line. Quote, if I was flying with somebody, I'd be wearing an oxygen mask anyway, close quote. He asked to store flight gear at home in a gun safe during flight duties so he wouldn't have to enter the building. Erickson denied the request, citing safety because his flight vest has a cartridge to inflate it. Quote, she said I was storing explosives at home, close quote. Explosives. Okay. Is that what you're wearing on your vest when you inflate it? Like if you go into the water, are you going to explode when you inflate your vest? Postma had a recorded conversation shortly after was, quote unquote, incoherent. You decide. Here's one expert. Erickson, quote, so it's the CAF's chief of air staff, the CAS requirements. So I think the 2 CCFF FTS, this is an untenable solution. But that said, from here, obviously, this is me denying it. So there is other things is that I can't accommodate CFFTS. But that's not to say like it is not my decision whether the CAS can accommodate it. So I think that's kind of where we probably want to pursue this, close quote. Okay, that is completely incoherent. I have no idea what she's saying. Erickson couldn't be reached for comment. Postma said the gear storage was an easy fix. Remote briefing / ground school were underway. The CO changed her reasons for denying the request to concerns she had about quality of training via remote briefings. The mask issue wasn't the first time Postma landed on the radar. He discovered he was under investigation for Facebook posts after a complaint was launched by retired Major Ryan Stitch. Quote, I was sharing news articles about hot button topics like anything that was negative of Trudeau. The Major The major from the Snowbirds called the military police and had me investigated, close quote. Quote, that's when I became familiar with access to information process. I got a privacy request in to find out how this investigation happened. It was appalling to me that an investigation could occur over silly Facebook posts, essentially sharing news articles. Close quote. Well, yeah, it can. I mean, if you're if there's a whole policy now on social media use, and we need to maintain at least the appearance of political neutrality in the Canadian Armed Forces. So Canadian Armed Forces members they're not allowed to talk about Canadian politics and military matters. I always stuck to American politics to kind of get my fix. It was basically my pro wrestling. Yeah, you kind of need to be careful with that stuff. Even, the way around it, I guess, is if you just kind of straight down the line post links without comment, this kind of thing. But you're probably getting your toes pretty close to the line, if not over it, even in that situation. But a lot of people just aren't aware of this, and this guy is a fly boy. I think it's probably been somewhat insulated to this kind of heavy-handedness on the part of the chain of command up until recently. Okay. Quote, what country are we living in? I know I'm in the military, but that doesn't wipe you out of your free speech rights. No, but there are some restrictions, and that's appropriate. There isn't any law that says just because you're in the military member, you can't share news articles that are negative of your government, close quote. No, it's a regulation, 1936, QRNO 1936, probably QRNO 1914 as well. He also felt that it was his duty to raise awareness about the trial vaccines through the internal email system. Quote, are we telling our pilots this? He asked. Quote, there could be some adverse side effects that might end their career because pilots have to be in 100% top shape physically to fly, close quote. He was immediately removed as a flight safety officer. Quote, in flight safety, you're allowed to bring up concerns to file hazard reports. As soon as you're removed from that, then you're not allowed to do it anymore, close quote. Postma felt, quote unquote, quite alone during the ordeal. Only a few military members quietly expressed admiration for the quote unquote guts he had to remain maskless. When he attended Freedom Convoy 2022, quote unquote, hundreds voiced their support. Was he still in uniform when he did that? Because that would definitely be off limits. He said the military COVID-19 mandates were, quote, a war of attrition against reason and sanity, close quote. Quote, we're not having unique experience, but are simply going through the steps of a communist takeover via ideological subversion. Well done. Thank you very much, sir, for saying that. Quote, the takeover, quote, with the takeover, the government needs an utterly compliant military with nobody capable of critical thought. The government at the highest ranks of the military are engaged in purging anyone who would stand up to an illegal order, close quote. Yes, that's what I've been saying on this program for quite some time. It's an ideological purge, and by and large, all that's left now are the people who will just do and think whatever they are told. And I base that on my 20 years of experience. It was pretty astonishing to see the lack of thinking in a lot of people. They just blindly follow orders. But there are obviously these over 300 military members who are still there filing grievances and getting wins. So there is hope to be found there. Okay, quote, they want a military to be 100% occupied by the just follow orders type who would follow the order to shoot the prisoners of war, call in a strike on women and children, and load up the cattle cars to the camps, close quote. Far-fetched? Not if one looks at how civilians suffered at the hands of robotic military followers in China, Iran, North Korea, Germany, Cambodia, and elsewhere. Trudeau's Liberal government didn't hesitate to enact the Emergencies Act, War Measures Act. Quote, we're in trouble and reaching the last opportunity. We'll have to stop the erosion of our basic human rights. Taking our rights away has been normalized by all governments via the pandemic measures, close quote. Hopefully the lawsuits will be a wake-up call. Yes, we are hoping for that. And I do think that is kind of the main prong in the fight right now is it's in the legal battle space. And I'm going to be going in there on Wednesday again this week, this time for a mask violation that I got prior to the trucker convoy, because that was what I was kind of doing at the time. I think I basically thought I was the only guy. I was just fresh out of the military and out there getting arrested with my We Forget hat and going around maskless, telling people I was a conscientious objector. good luck getting any respect on the basis of your veteran status in that regard. And Darlene is here, and she's saying, I'm late this morning, was cooking. Push-ups, Darlene. You owe me 10 push-ups. Okay, that's... And Susan is here saying, just following orders. Types are denying any culpability or accountability, period. Yes, they are, but we got our hooks into them now with some of these decisions coming out, especially the Military External Grievance Review Board's decision that it was a Section 7 charter violation. And of course, in Alberta, they struck down Dina Henshaw's orders, said that they were a charter violation. So there's going to be a frickin' tidal wave of lawsuits to follow. The bad thing about it, though, that I see is like you're suing the government, so it's going to be the taxpayer that eventually ends up funding these settlements, unless we have something like, say, something on the level of like a Nuremberg 2 that gives us like special authority to sue the decision makers in particular. Susan is asking, can I ask if you know anything about James Topp? I know James Topp. I've marched with him. I marched with him in Ottawa, and I marched with him. Well, not Ottawa. I had to stop at the civic boundary to Ottawa because I'm banned for going to the trucker convoy, and then again for Rolling Thunder. I'm a 2-time war veteran that's not allowed to go to the National War Monument in all of this. And with James Topp, he has his courts martial coming up in September. He's just kind of laying low, getting ready for that right now. So we're not hearing a lot coming out of him, or anything for that matter. But he has his courts martial coming up. So I wouldn't expect to hear anything until after that's been resolved. Brian Patriot 23 over on Rumble is saying Dave Morrow, veteran, has some great videos covering this as well. Yeah, you're talking about the Section 7 violation. He interviewed Catherine Christensen, and we did basically the same interview here with Catherine, talking about the Section 7 charter violations and the MERGC's courageous decision to finally acknowledge the law. Yeah, Dave Morrow's been over there doing some really great work on this too. So check him out. He's a fellow veteran on YouTube. Okay, here's True North, and they say Bonakinski. How do you say that? Bonakoski. Allegations of misconduct start at the very top of Canada's military. That's the boomer generation. That's where it's always been coming from. Okay, here we go. It says, the hot days of summer take on a new meaning for Hayden Edmonston, the Vice Admiral who once headed up the Human Resources Department of Canada's military. As of Tuesday, his next 2 weeks will be spent in an Ottawa civilian courtroom, facing a judge without jury and answering to charges laid in December of 2021 of sexual assault and committing indecent acts. Represented by high-profile Toronto lawyer Ryan Greenspan, Edmonston has pleaded not guilty to both charges and says Greenspan is looking forward to, quote, restoring his reputation, close quote. Yeah, we've been seeing a purge, I think. It seems like everybody at the top who may not have been the just follow orders types were purged with a lot of these sexual assault allegations. So, and we have seen, we've reported on some of these folks already getting exonerated. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. But we're going to need leadership. So how we get these people back in there after they're exonerated, I don't know, or if we do. So back to the article. A publication ban is in place to protect the identity of the complainant. During Edmonston's arraignment, the court said the offenses allegedly took place on HNCS provider when it was docked at Pearl Harbor in September through November of 1991. As a former commander of the Military Personnel Command, Edmonston had the authority over career consequences for military members found to have engaged in sexual misconduct. His office's mandate included eliminating harmful and inappropriate behavior in the military and complying with a class action lawsuit against the Canadian Armed Forces over sexual misconduct, according to the military's website. Since early February 2021, multiple current and former senior Canadian military leaders have been sidelined, investigated, criminally charged, or forced into retirement from some of the most powerful and prestigious posts in the defense establishment. And they got their man, Woke Wayner, General Iyer, into the Chief of Defense Staff position, so he would issue the illegal order. That appears to be the case to me. They got everybody who was next in line for the Chief of Defense Staff out of the way and got the guy who was going to impose the illegal mandate in there, and I'm sure he'll get some kind of a cushy job offer once he leaves that position. But hopefully we can get him courts-martialed. It's going to be historic, but we're not coming up short in the historical firsts in Canada these days. We've had even the clerk of the Privy Council office, Michael Wernick, resigned in disgrace. That was a historical first, and God willing, we'll see the same for this chief of defense staff, and he should face some severe legal consequences. The Canadian military, of course, has been roiled by allegations of misconduct and questions about due process, starting at the very top. Here are the key players in the scandal as put out by the Canadian press. General Jonathan Vance, that cuck. Former chief of defense staff who stepped down on January 14th, 2022, a subordinate at the heart of the sexual misconduct allegation, Major Kelly Brennan, told a parliamentary committee that Vance fathered 2 children with her, but has taken no responsibility for them during a relationship that allegedly began in 2001 and continued after Vance became top commander in 2015. Yep, that's typical hypocrites. That's the boomer generation. That's what they've been accused of basically their entire lives ever since they went hip, or they went what do you call it, yuppie, back in the 80s there, when everybody was kind of looking around going, hey, what's up with all this yuppieism there, boomers? I thought you guys are supposed to be hippies. Well, they just kind of say whatever they got to say to get whatever the heck it is that they want. Vance was charged in July 2021 with obstruction of justice related to an investigation into sexual misconduct allegations. The Canadian Forces National Investigative Service said the criminal charge will be pursued on civilian court, given the details of the case and the limits of the military justice system. Admiral Art MacDonald, Vance's successor, who stepped aside 6 weeks after taking the top job. A former commander of the Royal Canadian Navy, MacDonald voluntarily gave up his new post when the defense minister announced on February 24, 2022, that the military police were looking into an allegation which hadn't been detailed publicly. The Canadian Forces National Investigative Services recently announced the end of the probe into MacDonald's conduct, saying they had decided there was not enough evidence to charge MacDonald under either the criminal code or the military's disciplinary code. It's a purge. Former Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan has come under fire from opposition MPs and the one-time Canadian Armed Forces Ombudsman over his handling of misconduct allegations. Yeah, he knew about Vance. And he swept it under the rug so they could have their yes men to inflict the Canadian Armed Forces with this PSYOP, with this gaslighting campaign of how they're all sexual miscreants for the stuff that the boomers have been up to their entire careers. Former Army Lieutenant Colonel and Vancouver Police Detective Sajjan had argued he was right to pass off responsibility for a report of misconduct against Vance in March 2018 to the Privy Council Office, the bureaucratic operation that supports the Prime Minister's office. He has told the House of Commons Defense Committee that drawing on an elected official to probe would be, quote, wrong and dangerous, politicizing any investigation, close quote. Gary Walburn, former military ombudsman who first raised misconduct allegations against Vance to Sajjan in a meeting in March 1st of 2018, Walburn has expressed frustration over the defense ministers referring him to the Privy Council, but the government has said senior civil servants were stymied in launching an investigation after the ombudsman refused to provide them with more information. Global News has reported the allegation Walburn raised involving a lewd email sent to a female corporal in 2012, 3 years before Vance became defense chief. Major General Danny Fortin, the former head of Canada's COVID-19 vaccine rollout, who was abruptly replaced in May, 5 days before the Canadian Forces National Investigative Services referred a sexual misconduct investigation to the Quebec Prosecution Service to determine whether charges should be laid. Through his lawyers, Fortin has denied any wrongdoing and said the allegation dates back more than 30 years. He is currently fighting the government in federal court for reinstatement in the position, alleging the decision to replace him was politically motivated and denied him due process. Yeah, I think he's actually been exonerated, hasn't he? Danny Fortin? I believe so. So yeah, there you go. That's a pretty good summary of the ideological purge that has taken place in order to get the purported leaders that they want into the positions to impose these illegal orders on people. Here's Mark Garrettson. Garrettson is Trudeau's attack dog on Twitter. We got Papa's Gorilla saying, thank you for his service. Always remember, no one has ever cared. I think that's in reference to Danny Fortin. it's a heck of a thing to witness the Stalinist purge that's taken place. And Colleen is saying, I want accountability. Yeah, I think we all want accountability. It's going to take time, guys. I report on this and I say this all the time. It is going to take time. The alternative here is a bloody revolution. And obviously, nobody who's ever served overseas in any kind of conflict zone wants to see that kind of thing happen here in Canada. And I keep saying that democracy was set up by our ancestors as a peaceful means of revolt. So the battle space right now, it's in the ideological battle space, and we're moving into the courts. We're starting to see some of these decisions coming out. It's going to take time, but it's a hell of a lot less blood. So this is the way to go. So here's Mark Gerritsen. He's Trudeau's attack dog on Twitter, and he's saying Pierre Poilievre brings this to the doorstep. Okay, so he's retweeting Globe and Fail article here. It says Germany's far right isn't on the doorstep of power; it's already arrived. Blah blah blah. Okay, so this is the kind of stuff that they attack the populist movements all over the world. And of course, right winger is basically a dirty word in the Canadian lexicon. And it's all very reminiscent of a lot of Marxist theory and how to deal with what they call the reactionaries coming out of the Frankfurt School. When you're doing a Marxist takeover, the people who stand up to them, you call them reactionaries, and you call them every name in the book, and you call them Nazis in particular. That's what they do, is they call us Nazis, which is ridiculous because I'm a right winger, therefore I'm not a socialist, not even close to a socialist. And that's what Nazis are. It's the National Socialist German Workers' Party, and of course, fascists in Italy at the time. Like, that is again a collectivist mindset that kind of stems from a lot of Marxist theory. It's not Marxist per se, but Mussolini himself was a Marxist, was the editor of a Marxist newspaper while he was in college, and then he went further to the left after World War I when he went to Spain to fight on the side of the fascists. Okay, so here is Mark Gerritsen, and he's retweeting that article. It says Germany's far right isn't on the doorsteps of power; it's already arrived. And he's quoting, "What's happening in Germany echoes the rise of Donald Trump, the populist forces that led to Brexit, and the far right in Europe, including in Italy and Sweden." So it used to be the case just only a few years ago that Canadian politicians and Canadian academics were always effusive for Europe and how, we in Canada, we're more sophisticated like those Europeans. We're not like those yucky Americans, this kind of thing. And now it seems like everything has turned in the other direction because, well, Europe is starting to turn in the other direction. They're starting to course correct. So we've seen like a right-wing, the election of a right-wing government in Sweden, especially in the wake of the migrant crisis, where they've seen no-go zones pop up in places like Mozambique, and they have not just gang problems but grenade problems, where emergency services can't even go into these no-go zones for fear of losing their lives. But yeah, they're just going to gaslight and tell us all that we're racist for expecting them to maintain our security here in Canada. And here's the Western Standard, and they're saying, okay, well, I'll go ahead and play the video instead of reading the quote to you. So here you go.
Very concerned about what's going on. So are you ready to be forced to take strangers into your home? I know that sounds unbelievable, but then most of us never would have believed the government would lock the country down for years over a virus either, would they? Canada's marching towards a national catastrophe as the government's refusing to even consider reducing the immigration numbers while our housing construction lags. This isn't a matter of my opinion. This is just simple math. The government plans to bring in nearly...
I got a pretty good comment from Randy here. He says the godfather of fascism is Giovanni Gentile. He was an Italian communist. I don't know about communist, but yeah, it's all the collectivist socialists. They're all like, communism is socialism, fascism is socialism. And Giovanni Gentile, he was the founding philosopher of fascism in Italy, and I think the kind of guiding mantra that he advanced was everything inside the state, nothing outside the state, nothing against the state. So they're statists. I'm an individualist, they're statists, and I would recommend, there was a great book by, I'll think of it. There was a great book called The Big Lie by Dinesh D'Souza. There we go. Okay, Dinesh D'Souza. He does great work. He's an Indian, as an East Indian American living in the United States. He did 3 years in jail for, as a political prisoner of Obama. And he did a great book called The Big Lie that really exposes the roots of fascism and American progressivism in particular. Well, the Nazis actually borrowed from the playbook of American progressives when they were crafting The Final Solution, is the basic thesis of the book. And he can show, the meeting minutes, the documented meeting minutes that led to this anyway. So quite interesting. All right, so back to Western Standard.
Nearly 1.5 million immigrants into Canada in the next 3 years, while we're expected to construct about 700,000 new housing units over that period. So where on earth does the government think we're going to put all these new Canadians? I mean, Canada's a winter country. It's not as if we can set up massive tent camps to hold the immigrants for a few years while we figure out what to do with them. People need shelter with solid walls and heat for 6 months of the year. So what's the plan? We're going to house the immigrants in community halls and gymnasiums? That won't be sustainable for terribly long. And I mean, again, the immigrants aren't necessarily coming in destitute. Many have funds, and they're going to be finding homes in the existing market. But that, of course, will push rents higher and purchase prices for homes higher. And Canada's already experiencing a housing affordability crisis. Then there's the healthcare shortage. Everybody's already having a hard time finding a family doctor. The lineups for specialty treatments are, people are suffering. They're long. Well, how is bringing millions of new Canadians in going to impact the healthcare availability and services in years to come? Now, what it's going to lead to, unfortunately, is tensions between current Canadians and new immigrants as citizens find themselves pushed into possibly homelessness by the surge in immigration. And that's not fair to the immigrants who are just simply seeking a new life or a home. But let's not pretend that this isn't going to happen. The ire, of course, should be directed at the legislators who refuse to back down on the ridiculous immigration targets. So why is the government so hung up on bringing in millions of people when we clearly don't have the infrastructure and services to handle them? Well, the Trudeau government's created a budgetary pyramid scheme, or even a Ponzi scheme. You see, with the massive increases in deficit spending, the government needs to try and pump the economy through your immigration, or it's going to crash. It's an artificial way to buy prosperity. But like any pyramid scheme, eventually the bottom becomes too wide. You can't keep widening it, and it won't sustain it, and the structure is going to collapse. I think most of these top decision makers are hoping and assuming they'll have retreated to their retirement destinations before it all falls apart. It's pretty cold comfort for us commoners, however. The push, though, when I get back to what I asked to start with, to force citizens to rent out rooms in their homes, it will start, and it's going to start as a soft sell. In fact, it's already begun. In Nova Scotia, their housing minister pointed out that there's 130,000 vacant bedrooms across that province that could be rented out to ease the housing crisis. Well, that's quite a suggestion. It's troublesome on a couple of fronts. I mean, for one, how does he know how many vacant bedrooms the province has? Well, remember all those questions that seemed so intrusive on the census form when they asked you about how many bathrooms you had and such? Well, now you see the sort of thing that information gets you used to. You can also see why, not just why they wanted to know, but why you probably shouldn't have cooperated with the census. The other issue is we have a senior government official looking at those, as for now, spare rooms with an eye to compelling people to rent them out. We know the progression of government when they do these things. The next step is going to be shaming people. People with large houses or empty nesters with spare bedrooms are going to be called selfish if they don't rent those rooms out. The politics of envy will come into play.
That is what Marxists attack all the time. That is the Marxist line attack, is they say that you're selfish for expecting that you should be allowed to keep the fruits of your labor.
And the government's going to demand homeowners do their fair share, they love that term, in easing the crisis. And of course, they will imply that holdouts are racist. Though, again, immigrants come in all colors, as do the existing homeowners and people residing in Canada.
And calling people racist is, in as far as I'm able to ascertain, the Chinese Communist Party's tactic. Anybody who so much as stands up to their agenda, they just call them a racist.
It isn't a matter of racism. It's a matter of statistics and ability. When the social shaming, though, doesn't work, the government will use its favorite tool to compel people to do things. They'll move on to taxes. In the UK, there's already what they call an empty bedroom tax. And Canadians on social media are already hinting that that might be a good idea here. Let's just call it what it is, though. It's a fine for those daring not to help the government with the immigration catastrophe it has created. So even with the social ostracization and the extra taxation, though, there's still people aren't going to comply. If they wanted to rent their spare rooms to strangers, they already would have. So then as tensions escalate across the nation due to growing homelessness, clashes between immigrants and citizens, the government will use its trump card. This will sound familiar. They'll declare a national emergency. Then they can suspend civil rights and people can be compelled to open their doors through the threat and seizure of things like their bank accounts or possibly even their property itself. It'll be for the public good, though, of course, right? That's why. Does this all sound far-fetched? Well, remember what happened when we were told just 2 weeks to flatten the curve? Authoritarians in power in Canada are capable of anything, and they've already proven that. We don't need to halt all immigration. That would be bad for the nation. We need to lower the numbers, though, to match the housing ability and infrastructure. Otherwise, we are on a collision course with a catastrophe.
Yes, sir. That seems to be where they're going next with a lot of this stuff and it's backward. Everything they're doing is backward, of course. Like the government is supposed to facilitate our lives, and what they're doing is they're making life harder for us. They're creating problems. These are manufactured problems, and then they just shame us for the problem. Oh, it's your fault. It's your fault that this is happening because you have an extra room in your home. It's your fault that the climate is warming because you drive a car. So they create the problems, and we need to make sacrifices to provide the solution. So, but that's their job. They're supposed to provide solutions, not problems. Okay. And, this is Urbanized, and, I don't know much about this publication, but they say, the title is Bad News for Housing, 71,000 construction jobs shed in Canada this year to date. So this really runs counter to a lot of the narrative that we're hearing right now. We need to bring in more people so we can build more houses. We don't have houses for more people to live in. At the same time, like, we're shedding 71,000 construction jobs. So where are all of these jobs for the newcomers? Where's the housing from the newcomers? It obviously doesn't add up, right? So it's unmitigated immigration to overwhelm our social support services, our criminal justice system, and to make life a hell of a lot less safe for the Canadians who are here now. And they just keep spewing this line like immigration is going to solve all our problems, but in fact, it is the source of a lot of our problems. The unmanaged, unmitigated, overwhelming levels of immigration that we've seen in the last few years. So. There are renewed Canada-wide calls to address national housing crisis by building more new additional supply as key strategy. But the country's capacity for achieving this housing supply through new construction is shrinking, continuing a pre-pandemic trend of shortage of skilled trade workers. Newly released data from Statistics Canada shows the country's employment in the construction sector dropped by 45,000 positions in July, representing a 2.8% decrease, and 14,000 in June, representing a 0.8% decrease. For the losses in June alone, British Columbia led with a shedding of 21,000 construction jobs, followed by Quebec's drop of 11,000 and Ontario's drop of 9,000. Over the first 7 months of the year, since January 2023, employment in construction across Canada has fallen by 71,000. This offsets the increase of 65,000 between September 2022 and January 2023. In fact, the construction industry led Canada's job losses by a wide margin in July, followed by job losses in public administration, information culture, recreation, transportation, warehousing, and professional scientific technical services. With lower home sale volume, high borrowing costs for construction financing, and high construction costs for materials and labor due to inflation, housing developers and builders are increasingly seeing pressures with the financial viability of their projects. A recent report by RBC Economics found home construction costs in Canada soared by 51% during the pandemic since early 2020, with labor being one of the main cost drivers due to the persistent shortage. Labor costs in the construction sector went up by 9.4% in 2022 alone, as projects increasingly need to compete for the same limited labor pool. Last year, a Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, study deemed the shortage of construction workers is a major challenge for building new housing, especially in BC and Ontario. So there you go. They're saying it's, so there's a labor shortage, and then there's, unemployment. Unemployment is rising. None of this stuff is coherent, not the way that they're presenting it. Yeah, I mean, they're just exacerbating the problem by continuing, and I think it's deliberate. They're deliberately exacerbating our problems with the unmitigated immigration that they continue to insist upon. Here is Stacy, and she's tweeting out the irony of this Facebook post quote from Mark Garretson. Well done, liberals. Congratulations. So here's Mark Garretson, and this I think is clipped from his Facebook. He's got this blue check mark. Is that a thing on Facebook too? I guess it is. But the likes button kind of gives it away here for the because it's a heart on Twitter. So it looks like it's coming from his Facebook, and she's got it says, "Congrats, Ian, on a remarkable career in our community. Enjoy your well-deserved retirement." And the tweet itself has the little padlock for security logo. It says, "This content isn't available in Canada. In response to Canadian government legislation, news content can't be viewed on Facebook." So well done, everyone. And here is Garretson again, and he says, "Just so we are clear on how far Pierre Poilievre has taken the federal Conservative Party to the alt-right, this guy is his candidate." Now, there's the alt-right. I've always been kind of suspicious of this term, the way it's getting thrown around, because it wasn't until Hillary Clinton made the basket of deplorables speech that alt-right became some kind of a fascist neo-Nazi type term. It was kind of floating around out there in the ecosystem as somebody who's an individualist but doesn't necessarily support the Republican Party or the establishment right, and basically it's the new generations coming up now. It's the millennials and the Gen Xers, and Hillary Clinton called us all deplorables, and now the alt-right is a dirty word. And there was that whole thing with Spencer, that Richard Spencer, and he is, I guess, he was the first guy to use the term alt-right or something like that. I never heard of the guy before the election of Donald Trump, when all of a sudden this neo-Nazi is holding a rally in Washington, D.C. Like there's a concentration of Nazis in D.C., which is just a left-wing hellhole where they're all Zig Heiling and saying Heil Hitler and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden alt-right is somehow synonymous with Nazism. So that's where we are right now. But yeah, that's what he means when he says alt-right. He means like Nazis. Okay, and he's retweeting Roman Baber, who is saying, "I'm honored to be nominated by CPC's HQ's candidate for in York Center for the next federal election. Let's rally behind Pierre Poilievre to defeat Justin Trudeau, make life more affordable, and turn Canada into the freest country in the world. Thank you, York Center." And Roman Baber, like, so this is the scare tactic. They're using Roman Baber to scare everybody away from the Conservative Party as he's some kind of alt-right neo-Nazi because he stood up to the mandates. He got kicked out of Slug Ford's cabinet there because he was standing up to the mandates. He was raising all kinds of concerns, and he wasn't allowed to speak in Queen's Park. And like he's a trained lawyer. He's been in cabinet in Ontario. He's got all kinds of experience coming with a very impressive CV for a politician, and he'll probably, I think, be shortlisted for a cabinet position and he's an immigrant too, isn't he? Yeah, he's an immigrant. So it's pretty hilarious to see them trying to label this guy as some kind of a neo-Nazi. But that's where we are right now. Like I said, these are the reactionaries, to use the language of Marxist theorists from the Frankfurt School. Anybody who stands up to the agenda, you just call them a Nazi. So here's Charlie Kilo on Twitter, and they're saying, "Interesting that rival networks CBC and CTV both pushed the exact same hit piece on Pierre Poilievre today. It's almost as if there was someone in the middle coordinating all of this, telling them what to publish." Yeah, no kidding. And he's tweeting out this couple of graphics here. Here's CBC News saying, "Poilievre's Conservative Party embracing language of mainstream conspiracy theorists." Tory leaders' summer stump speeches include ramped up rhetoric about the World Economic Forum. And I've been saying this is a positive thing. Now, Pierre Poilievre, like he's a practiced and polished professional politician and a paper tiger, Pierre Poilievre, but he's a political bellwether. He just kind of licks his finger to see where the political winds are blowing, and then he gets on board with whatever talking points are going to win him the election. But I point to a lot of what he's doing as an indication that the political winds in Canada are changing, and now he's starting to address some of these concerns coming from people on the World Economic Forum and globalism and this kind of thing. So that's a good sign for us, for Canadians. But the mainstream is coming out hard against this kind of thing. And here you can see it's a good graphic side by side because you've got the same headline coming from CTV and CBC. CTV says Poilievre's Conservative Party embracing language of mainstream conspiracy theories. Ooh. And CBC, Poilievre's Conservative Party embracing language of mainstream conspiracy theories. Ooh, okay. And here is National News Watch, and they're saying Poilievre's Conservative Party embracing language of mainstream conspiracy theories. This is from the 13th, so yesterday. And here, I'll go ahead and read this article. It's not too long. And it says, Ottawa Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has been hitting the summer barbecue circuit with ramped up rhetoric around debunked claims that the World Economic Forum is attempting to impose its agenda on sovereign governments. Is that really debunked? I mean, Klaus Schwab is on the record with the useless eaters and, all the penetrating the cabinets, all of that stuff. So he has penetrated Justin Trudeau. He's on the record saying that he penetrated Justin Trudeau, and the idea that anybody's concerns around these supranational organizations getting a foothold into our democracies, that these concerns can be dismissed out of hand is just ludicrous, because they're all, it's an open, it's not even conspiracy. They're very open about their agenda. Okay, back to the article. It is, some experts suggest, some experts suggest another sign that some conspiracy theories are moving from the fringes of the internet to the mainstream thinking as people's distrust in government grows. In speeches to Conservative supporters across Canada, Poilievre has promised that none of his ministers will attend the international organization's conferences, including the annual meeting typically held in Davos, Switzerland. Quote, "It's far past time we rejected the globalist Davos elites and bring home the common sense of the common people," close quote, said at a Saturday fundraising email. The Conservative Party also recently sent out mailers with a poll to ask people to tell Prime Minister Justin Trudeau who they think the Prime Minister should stand with, working Canadians or the World Economic Forum. The wording implies Trudeau's cabinet is beholden to the latter. Isn't he? Poilievre did not agree to an interview on this matter. His spokesman instead pointed the Canadian press to a clip of him at the rally in Penticton, BC in July, expressing concerns over the government invading people's personal privacy and financial decisions. Quote, "There will be no mandatory digital ID in this country, and I will ban all of my ministers and top government officials from any involvement in the World Economic Forum," close quote, Poilievre said, chuckling as he received lengthy applause for the remark. I'm always kind of keying in on the language. I'm interested in, you got to pay careful attention to this stuff. And he says there will be no mandatory digital ID in this country. So, I mean, the vaccine mandates weren't mandatory, were they? You had a choice. Something to pay attention to there, folks. Canada has long participated in WEF events. Former Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper and his cabinet ministers attending the summit regularly. Trudeau attended in person in 2016 and 2018, and his ministers have attended as well. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland went to the most recent annual summit in January. On digital IDs, the federal government has been looking at technology to create a national digital identification document to help people access government services. It has not been promoted as something that will become mandatory. Well, not yet. Last winter, it's the same thing with the housing. Like they're asking us nicely at first, and then it's going to be the shaming tactics, and then it's going to become coercive. It's the same tactic across the board, right? That's the same battle strategy. Last winter, a conspiracy theory circulating on social media suggested Trudeau was going to require provinces to sign on to the digital ID system for their residents in order to get billions in new healthcare funding. That conspiracy was also debunked, was it? Dwayne Brad, political science professor at Mount Royal University in Calgary, said some people have long embraced conspiracies, but now they have moved into mainstream politics. Quote, the big shift that we have seen is that it is now being promoted by someone who could become prime minister, close quote, said Brad. Oh, shame on Pierre Poilievre for being responsive to the concerns of Canadians. Poilievre peddled the WEF control claims during the Conservative leadership race in 2022. It has emerged again as a regular talking point following the federal by-election in southern Manitoba, said Bratt. You know, it's everybody went around doing the Build Back Better line that traces its roots right back to Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset. So the gaslighting here is pretty palpable. Okay. In that contest in Portage Lisgar, the Conservatives were looking to beat back a growing challenge from the People's Party of Canada. Maxime Bernier, leader of that party, who has long accused the WEF of having a globalist agenda, ran in a by-election. The Conservatives attacked him for having attended the Davos summit when he was Harper's foreign affairs minister in 2008. Bratt said Poilievre's embrace of conspiracy theories could be because he's attempting to steal back votes from the PPC. He actually did, like the PPC came away with a weaker showing than they did in the previous election, in that by-election. So there is that to consider. Quote, the question does not really believe it. The question is, does he really believe it, or is he just pandering to people? And will he pivot again if he becomes prime minister, close quote, said Bratt. Kauster Ahmad, a politics professor at the University of Winnipeg with a research specialty presidential election in the United States, aided by social media and encrypted messaging apps. But Ahmed said the biggest trigger was the COVID-19 pandemic. Quote, at that time, whatever decisions government took, it was explained to some corner of our citizens, in line with conspiracy theories, that the government is controlling you. The government has asked to give you a vaccine. The government has asked not to go out, and so forth, close quote, said Ahmed. Well, that all happened. It's a sentiment politicians have learned to pick up on, and Brad believes that many people aren't willing to reject politicians just because they peddle false claims or conspiracies. Quote, there's a lot of ideas that are now moving into the mainstream and are simply not supported by science, evidence, or facts. Yeah, the WEF doesn't exist, guys. He said, but it doesn't matter, and some of those politicians have been elected, like the current premier of Alberta. A close quote. United Conservative Party Premier Danielle Smith has said she is in lockstep with Poilievre and having nothing to do with the World Economic Forum. Populism has driven politicians to feed into conspiracy theories because they need votes, and fear is a great motivator, said Ahmed. They get less interest in peddling for votes using their record. Quote, it's very easy to appeal to people that something is a threat, he said. Quote, for example, your identity, your livelihood, your religious values, close quote. Ahmed said this is affecting our democracy, pitting groups against each other, creating suspicion, and harming national security by spreading misinformation that eventually affects policy. This is like this whole article is utterly bereft of facts. It's just kind of these elites, these university professors emoting about the kind of momentum that Pierre Poilievre is gaining. Like when you go to an expert, they're supposed to be able to show you their work. And that's what we've really gotten away from, is the experts showing you the evidence and analysis that they used to reach their conclusions, and they just emote at you and call you names. So, and then it becomes like part of the dogma. The experts say, expert testimony this, and experts say. Okay, and here is Gary Geller, and he says, the story features two sources. So the story, the National Newswatch story that we just read, here you go. This is Gary Keller. He says, story features two quote unquote sources, one a Liberal Party donor. Do better. Yeah, so that's what's going on there. The Ahmed Kauser, there's the guy that they were just quoting, and he's a Liberal Party donor. Big surprise there. They're having a hard time getting a judge to look into the Chinese election interference to head up the inquiry there. They're going down their list of donors, and it's just so toxic at this point, especially after especially after the special rapporteur, got roundly defenestrated by everybody. Nobody seems to want to go near this thing. So, but yeah, this is the kind of stuff that we see in Canada right now. It's just manufacturing consent, using what was once a media as a propaganda machine, and they just go to their donors and their friends to spin the narrative. Okay, and here is CTV News spinning some more narrative. This doesn't even have anything to do with Canada or anything, but the populist movement is taking hold globally. So they're going after, like we saw in a previous article, politicians in Europe, as well as here's Argentina. Far-right populist emerges as biggest vote getting in Argentina's presidential primary voting. Buenos Aires, Argentina. Far-right populist Javier Milei rocked Argentina's political establishment Sunday by emerging as the biggest vote getter in primary elections to choose presidential candidates for the October general election in a nation battered by economic woes. Milei, an admirer of former U.S. President Donald Trump, that means he's evil, says Argentina's central bank should be abolished, thinks climate change is a lie, characterizes sex education as a ploy to destroy the family, believes the sale of human organs should be legal, and wants to make it easier to own handguns. Sounds like my kind of guy, except for this, the sale of human organs. But who knows what he's really said. This is their characterization of what this guy said. So votes are still being counted late Sunday, but analysts agreed that the upstart candidate, who gained notoriety and a rock star-like following by angrily ranting against the, quote, political caste, close quote, did much better than expected and is a real contender for the presidency in the South American country. With nearly 2/3 of polling locations reporting results, Milei had around 32% of the total vote, according to official results. The candidates in the main opposition coalition, United for Change, were at 28%, and the current governing coalition, Union for the Homeland, had 26%. Before the election, analysts had warned that it would be that a better than expected showing for Milei, 52, would likely upset financial markets and lead to a sharp plunge in the value of Argentina's peso amid uncertainty about what economic policies he might implement if he became president. Probably some policies that would run afoul of BlackRock and they put their SDG score on everything now, and they're like CEO Larry Fink says they want to force behavior. And this guy is standing up for his people, probably, and saying, no, you're not going to force my people. So I would expect some short-term pain in anticipation of long-term gain there in Argentina as they get attacked by BlackRock and other corporations like that, mega corporations, investment firms. Okay, that's not really that's probably good enough for this particular propaganda piece. But as you can see, it's a Marxist propaganda machine, a Pravda, that we're up against here. They're going after everybody who is to the right of Stalin, just calling them names and saying they're haters and conspiracy theorists and rubes and this sort of thing. So it's really something to see. Okay. Back to Canada here, we have Andy Lee, special rebel rapporteur, tweeting out, Senator Wu takes time out of his busy schedule to cry the blues and make a video about how racist Canadians are because we are asking for foreign agent registration legislation. It's posted to the WeChat of a United Front group that liaises with Chinese consulate officials. So Andy Lee's been doing some wonderful work on this, as has her friend Lost in Translation on Twitter. Give Lost in Translation a good follow there, because they're into all the WeChats and they're posting this kind of stuff too. And this is a guy that I've been pointing to for a while, Senator Wu, Senator Victor O, and others who are, they certainly appear to be Chinese Communist Party assets that are coming after Canadians. This is the guy who wants to, these are the folks who, is it Wu or is it O who set up the fund? He wants to set up a fund to sue any Canadians who smear Chinese, as in criticize the Chinese Communist Party.
They attack my personality. They attack my background. They attack who I am as a person.
who is doing that? Who is attacking him as a person? Who is attacking his background? What did they say? There's not going to be any of that stuff forthcoming. This is a straight up gaslighting campaign with these unsubstantiated claims of Canadians being racist because we're concerned about Chinese Communist Party infiltration into our democracy.
Rather than attacking my ideas, I'm happy for anybody to challenge my ideas. That is the meaning of our democracy, and that is the way we can make good policy. I can be wrong, of course, but you tell me how I'm wrong in my ideas. Don't tell me I'm wrong because I'm Chinese. That is racism. No, I will not stop speaking.
Who the heck even says anything like that? This is pure fabrication.
And I will not stop speaking out, not because I enjoy getting attacked. Nobody likes being called these horrible names or having to face physical threats. I don't like that. But I am in a position of privilege. I am protected. I am more protected than you and hundreds of thousands of other Chinese Canadians. If I don't speak out, who will speak out? It's important that those of us who have protections and privilege and who believe in the value of being a Canadian, the value of our multicultural society, the value of reason and logic and common sense in discussing important issues. Those of us who have that privilege must speak out, and we need to support each other.
Okay. Facing this kind of situation, do you still think that Canada is a multicultural country?
If we really believe in multiculturalism, then we have to stop giving the impression that foreign means suspicious, that foreign means threatening, because we are now...
Foreign agent means threatening. They're looking for a foreign agent registry, and it's not just a Chinese agent registry. It's a foreign agent registry, the likes of which it's had in the United States for quite a long time, and it's a security measure. So it's a basic security measure that I can't even believe we haven't had up until this point.
Heading in a direction where foreign somehow is something we need to be afraid of. But if we are a country of immigrants and we believe that multiculturalism is what Canada stands for, then foreign is what we embrace. We should welcome ideas, perspectives, backgrounds from around the world. And even if we disagree, we should respect that views that come from the outside are part of what made Canada great. Now, we need to find a way to distinguish between positive foreign influence and negative foreign influence. But we have to do that.
See him using that word foreign? Foreign means bad. I thought we weren't allowed to use that word. Yeah, and the way to distinguish between these things is to establish a registry of foreign agents.
Through dialogue and education and respect. We cannot do it by saying your view is not acceptable, therefore we will ban your view, or we will make you register so that you are seen as an agent of a foreign country. That is a modern form of exclusion. And while it is not as bad as 100 years ago, it is still unacceptable.
Okay, whatever. CCP asset senator there. And DL is saying they will just buy us. Yeah, they're in the process of buying us. I try my best to highlight any suspicious economic activity, especially as it pertains to PEI these days. I'm particularly concerned about PEI. But these are the kinds of things, like, we need to be able to talk about our suspicions. We need to be able to, we have to have some difficult conversations with people about where their loyalties lie. It's not going to be comfortable, but it's necessary in order to assure our security and safeguard the freedoms that we've inherited for future generations. So, you know, this isn't about the mistreatment of people. This isn't about racism or xenophobia like he wants to make it out to be. It's just about basic security of our institutions in our country. So here's Andy Lee again. WeChat posts urge all Chinese Canadians to oppose the vote against Conservative MP Kenny Chiu in 2021 because he introduced Bill C-282, a Foreign Influence Registry Act, stating that the bill will, quote, catch all of our pro-China associations. Yeah, okay. So she's posting the WeChat stuff, and this is what we see is they're mobilizing a lot of different assets, and they go after these dissidents, and they'll approach them and start talking about their families and stuff like that to try to coerce them and scare them into supporting CCP activities here in Canada. So this is exactly the kind of thing that we need to prevent. People come to Canada looking to get away from all of this thuggery, and now it has followed them here. So yeah, we need to protect these people and protect our democracy as well. And she's retweeting David Mulrooney here. He says, enough stalling. We need an inquiry into Chinese election interference now. Globalmail.com opinion editor, quote, one urgent mandate for the inquiry will be to look into the possibility the Liberal government knew China was trying to influence the outcome of recent elections, but didn't act. Well, they're probably in bed with them. They probably like all the help that they're getting. So yeah, we definitely need a full, open, transparent public inquiry. And speaking of what Al or DL was just saying here, they will just buy us. Okay, so here is PEI Connectors, and they're saying yesterday we had a networking session with Flourish Development Group at their beautiful Foxwood subdivision in Stratford. We got to hear the stories behind subdivision developments, house building, and commercial property management. Our entrepreneur clients got the opportunity to network with and learn from the Flourish team, President and CEO Robert Chang, General Manager Zhen Du, and Chief Property Manager Scott Graves, and Accounting Technician Jennifer Kim. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to the Flourish team for their hospitality and everyone who joined us, making the event a success. And here is their team. And here is one guy who is not Chinese. Here is one lady who is not Chinese. And there's how many people? Oh, here's one guy in the back here who's not. So that's 3 people. And we got we got 4, 8, 12. Oh, that's 4 people. Yeah, I got about almost 20. Got about 20 people in this picture, and maybe 4 of them are not ethnically Chinese. Now, the ethnicity piece is a little bit uncomfortable to talk about, but like I said, we need to have some difficult conversations with people about where their loyalties lie. Oh, okay. I'll move on there. And here's Robert Chang. He's the president and he is the president and CEO of what are these guys? Flourish Group. That's the Flourish Group that we were just talking about here. They were holding the meeting there for development in PEI in particular. And here's Robert Chang. I've shown him here before, and he says, it says, Robert has 21 years of rich working experience in financial services, equity investment, and large-scale real estate development in China. He has a profound professional background and holds several professional certificates in economics, accounting, and financial planning areas. Robert moved his family to Canada in 2014, establishing a very prestigious antique store in downtown Charlottetown. In 2016, he established PEI-based real estate companies, Flourish Development Group, which offers both residential and commercial land and real estate investment/development, property management, and related consulting services in Atlantic Canada. Robert is always committed to working hard, setting a good model for new immigrants successfully settled in PEI. Set a good model for new immigrants successfully settled in PEI. Robert's management philosophy, not only to construction, a number of good houses. This is poorly written. It reads like somebody who speaks Mandarin as a first language wrote this. And I'm always looking at the way they use adjectives. The Chinese Communist Party just really likes to use adjectives like rich working experience. Roberts is always committed to and working hard, setting a good model for new immigrants successfully settled in PEI. Robert's management philosophy, not only to construction, a number of good houses, not only to construct a number of good houses, but also to create a series of sustainable multicultural communities. Achieve yourself and give back to society. Achieve yourself. I think that's a pretty poor translation from Mandarin here. And we can see here's the general manager, Zhen Du. Here's the general manager of Comfort Living, Tom Tan. Here is the accounting technician, Jennifer Kim. And then we have a property manager and site supervisor who are not of Chinese descent. And here's the IT technician, Ricky Gao. Okay, so suspicious, I think. And this is the kind of thing, like I said, like we need to be able to talk about our suspicions. And these things, need to be investigated. There needs to be a full and open public inquiry into what the heck is going on, because it's just like DL was just saying, they will just buy us. Yeah, that is the strategy, I think, is they're just going to buy everything out from underneath us. We can rent from them and stand in their bread lines. And here is Newsweek, and they're saying China's plan to rule the world's smart devices. FCC urged to act. And this is just from last week, the 8th of August. And here it is. When police, firefighters, and other first responders across the U.S. rush to emergencies, they rely on special devices to avoid overwhelmed public networks. Chinese spies could be listening in. Chinese-made components in devices certified for use on federally managed FirstNet public safety networks are designed to be able to send information back to servers in China, and it's not clear how effective the security measures to prevent that are, according to engineers and industry sources with knowledge of the equipment who spoke to Newsweek. Their components or cellular connectivity modules are generally used to connect objects, whether cars or medical equipment, to the internet. The growing ubiquity of Chinese cellular connectivity modules in these and other devices in the so-called Internet of Things has prompted concerns in Congress, including a letter from the House Select Committee on Strategic Competition between the U.S. and the Chinese Communist Party, urging regulators to address the potential security risk. It also promised to open a new front in the increasingly complicated tussle over technology between Washington and Beijing. Just go back to what Donald Trump did and delist these. He did it right before he left office, but of course it didn't last long. Delist all these CCP affiliated corporations from the World Trade Organization. We got to hit them in their wallets where it really hurts. And I remember when I was down in the U.S. working at Tyndall Air Force Base, while I was still serving, there was an order that came down from the U.S. chain of command to strip the networks of all of the equipment that was labeled made in China, because they were installing firmware into all of their devices to capture data and send them back to Chinese to servers in Beijing or China. And I never saw a similar order come down the Canadian chain of command. I was waiting for it. I was watching for it, and I never saw anything like that come from the Canadian chain of command. So what does that say about where we are in Canada with respect to Chinese infiltration? So back to the article, quote, using these modules may create a backdoor for malign Chinese government actors to access and potentially cripple first response devices, close quote, said committee chairman, Representative Mike Gallagher told Newsweek. Quote, it's just common sense. American critical infrastructure must not be dependent upon CCP technology, close quote, Gallagher said. The letter is also signed by a select committee ranking member, Representative Raja Krishnamurthy. Sorry, I'm going to butcher that. Officials from the FirstNet Authority, the federal agency that manages the emergency network, told Newsweek that Chinese modules are used in devices certified for their system, but said their testing and other measures kept them secure. Security experts and former officials said they were much less confident. The House Committee's letter sent on Monday urges the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, to use the same tools Congress gave it to keep Chinese firms such as Huawei out of the 5G infrastructure in the United States. While the measures against those companies drew wide attention and denials of any harmful activities from the Chinese firms, their concerns over Chinese-made modules in sensitive equipment made by lesser-known companies such as Quectel have been a little reported. Both the U.S. and China see it as vital to dominate emerging technologies. U.S. administrations have sought to restrict China's imports of cutting-edge technology such as high-performance microchips and to keep Chinese-made networking equipment out of the newly built 5G backbone in the U.S. China has rejected any suggestion that its companies are a threat to the U.S., but it has also applied its own sanctions on some U.S. firms. The Internet of Things, quote, machines talking to machines on the internet, close quote, is a fast-growing technology that extends far beyond secure communications. It is in so-called smart consumer goods such as refrigerators, light bulbs, and garage doors, as well as automobiles, medical equipment, and aircraft maintenance systems, to name just a few. A smart refrigerator, for instance, would track its contents, send text or email messages to remind you of expiration dates, and order a delivery when you're low on eggs. Data from the cellular modules represents a potential quote-unquote gold mine for Chinese intelligence, which could analyze information collected from millions of connected devices for insights into what is happening in the U.S. at times of national crisis or at any other time, according to engineers, former diplomats, and intelligence officials. In addition to questions over the U.S. reliance on Chinese technology in areas such as policing and disaster response, there are also concerns over risks to key infrastructure such as energy and transportation. The Chinese Communist Party leaders have repeatedly said they are pursuing global economic, military, scientific, and technological preeminence by 2049, while U.S. intelligence services have labeled China as the greatest threat to the country. Yeah, and 2049 would be the centennial for the Chinese Communist Party. I think that Xi Jinping is probably looking at that date as a good time to rein in the new Red Emperor. The Red Emperor was the emperor of China, to whom all the surrounding kingdoms had to pay homage. So if the kings of a neighboring country were to visit China, they would have to do the kowtow, where they prostrate themselves before the Red Emperor and touch their forehead to the ground 3 times. That's the kowtow. That's where the term comes from. And yeah, I think that they're looking to install a global model that mirrors this by 2049. Disabling every police body cam with the click of a mouse. Western experts are especially alarmed because China's sweeping national security laws compel its technology companies to share any data they have anywhere in the world if requested by the country's intelligence services, said retired British diplomat Charles Parton, who spent more than 2 decades working on or in China and is now a fellow at the Royal United Services Institute. Quote, all data goes back to China. Data of that kind at this scale, it's a gold mine for Chinese intelligence agencies to exploit if Chinese companies dominate the supply of these modules, close quote. Parton said, quote, imagine knowing the location minute by minute of every police body cam in the United States or the UK, close quote. The sensitive devices the Chinese-made modules are in could even be sabotaged en masse to help destabilize the US in the event of a war, either by switching them off or, more subtly, degrading their performance, experts say. Quote, imagine being able to power down every police body cam in the US, disable them with the click of a mouse. China would never need to fight America. They could just turn it off. That is perfectly possible, close quote, said Parton, who researched and wrote a white paper on the vulnerabilities created by Western reliance on these modules. And this is very much in line with what I've been saying. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And that's what they're going to do, is they're going to turn off our infrastructure, seize control of our financial sector. They're going after the farming, they're going after everything, right? It's the Chinese play Go, whereas in the West we play chess. And chess tends to focus on the one key piece that we're trying to capture, whereas in Go, it's about all the pieces, capturing all the pieces at once, total domination of the board. It's like a Chinese finger trap, right? You can't pull out of it. So what I'm always saying is lean into it. Those are the kinds of tactics that we need to adopt. We need to lean into the trap in order to that's how you get out of the Chinese finger trap, is you push into it, you don't pull out of it, right? So you push right into this stuff. When they start calling you a racist and you just start doing the Chinese accent, that's the Sarah Silverman approach, I think, from back in the 90s that we need to get back to. She made a joke about a Chinese guy, and then she got called a racist, and she came out with her apology, which consisted of, me Chinese, me play joke, me go pee-pee in your Coke. And yeah, that's how you respond to this kind of gaslighting and name calling and stuff like that, is you lean into it. Okay, so back to the article. Quote, ensuring the security of the FirstNet network is paramount to the success and safety of our public safety users, close quote. FirstNet Authority Communications Director Ryan Orleman Ormland told Newsweek in a written response to questions. He said there was, quote, a robust process, close quote, including any extensive testing to ensure, quote, the highest levels of security are maintained on the network and any equipment or devices that are used on the network, close quote. AT&T, which runs the FirstNet network under contract from the federal government, audited Chinese-made modules in 2018. The company's head of FirstNet operations, Scott Agnew, told Newsweek by email, quote, to ensure they can operate safely and securely on the FirstNet network, close quote. Why at all? Why not, why does it have to be Chinese-made equipment on these networks that we need to put all these mitigating strategies in place in order to use them at all? I say just get rid of them like the American military did. That is the safest approach. Before being allowed on the network, devices undergo a battery of more than 3,500 tests, he added, quote, including examining firmware and data transports, close quote. Manufacturers of device used on FirstNet that were approached by Newsweek declined to comment on the risk of data transmission to China. Security experts and former officials said they did not trust the view of some of the industry that the modules have been engineered into devices in a way that prevents transmission of data. They said the basic capabilities of the modules and the lack of transparency of the companies that manufacture them in China made it impossible to trust them. Cellular modules are just small, matchbox to cigarette pack size components and a kind of stripped down mobile phone. They enable the device which they're inside to connect to the mobile phone network to become part of the Internet of Things. Consumers benefit from the ease that IoT technology, that's Internet of Things technology connectivity provides, and companies benefit from the data they can get from the devices, both to improve their products and to sell additional services. Financial support from the Chinese state. In 2022, there were 202 million cellular IoT connections in the U.S., and 2.8 billion worldwide, according to Satyajit Senai, a principal analyst of IoT Analytics, a Hamburg, Germany-based company. Those numbers are set to more than double to 450 million and 5.8 billion, respectively, over 5 years. 2/3, 4 billion of those cellular connections will be in China, Sinha said. The top two cellular module manufacturers in the world in 2022, Kectel and Fibocom, were in China, according to IoT Analytics. Their close ties to the Chinese Communist Party are clear from the significant state support they receive in the form of financial subsidies, grants, and tax breaks, according to the extensive review by Newsweek of Chinese language company reports, official documents, and state media accounts. Communist Party leaders make no secret about the role technology will play in their publicly declared goal of global preeminence. IoT was identified as an, quote, emerging strategic industry, close quote, as early as 2009. By 2012, the powerful Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, which works closely with the Ministry of State Security, was calling the technology, quote, strategic high ground, close quote. China's 13th and 14th five-year plans, running from 2016 to 2025, identified IoT technology as part of the, quote, information flow, close quote, along the Belt and Road Initiative, China's vast push to build a hold on global infrastructure. Yeah, one belt, one road. Check it out. It's that's the strategy to basically colonize the planet. Dominating emerging technology markets such as IoT isn't only an economic goal, say security experts and former officials. China's leaders believe it is also the key to a new world order that will enable the Communist Party to further consolidate control at home and extend it around the world, according to Lisa Tobin, a former national security official who has worked on China issues at the CIA, the Pentagon, and the White House. They, quote, understand that the nation which controls the technology controls the world and gets to write the rules of the road for the digital economy and for the information that flows over these networks, close quote, she said. The ambition to, quote, build a science and technology superpower, close quote, was highlighted in Chinese leader Xi Jinping's latest book, published in May and titled On Technology, Self-Reliance, and Self-Improvement. In 2022, Kectel, which Beijing has designated a, quote, national champion, close quote, in IoT technology, reported annual operating revenue of just under $2 billion and owned 38.5% of the global market for modules by volume, according to Counterpoint Research. That makes it the backbone of China's burgeoning dominance in the sector. Altogether, the dozen or so Chinese manufacturers had 77% of the global market by volume last year, although that includes a huge Chinese domestic market. Outside of China, Chinese companies expanded to capture 53% of all sales by volume last year. Counterpoint's senior research analyst Sumen Mendal told Newsweek. Contributing to the success has been a variety of direct and indirect financial support from the Chinese state, including export tax rebates, other exemptions and offsets designed to support high-tech businesses, and preferential tax rate 10 percentage points lower than the regular company's tax of 25%. Subsidies also come from local governments. Official media reported in May that the groundbreaking ceremony for Kectel's $175 million new HQ in state-sponsored special high-tech commercial and R&D zone in Shanghai was attended by senior local and municipal party officials, indicating government backing of the project and company. A Newsweek analysis of Chinese language company reports, official documents, and state media accounts show that Kectel received hundreds of millions of dollars in direct and indirect support. But Newsweek was unable to quantify the exact value of state support for Kectel and other module manufacturers. A 2022 report by Center for Strategic and International Studies found that most estimates of state support to industry in China, quote unquote, understate subsidies to private sector companies, quote, including national champions in high-tech sectors, close quote. A very different ball game. Two executives at Western IoT companies told Newsweek that the impact of the subsidies on their marketplace was obvious. Chinese module manufacturers undercut their Western competitors' prices by 15 or 20% while paying their top sales staff 4 or 5 times what they would earn at one of those competitors. One executive noted that Kectel reported a gross margin of 19% in 2022, less than half of Western competitors. The 6,000 personnel that Kectel said it has working in research and development also gives an edge over Western peers. For Chinese technology companies, the strategic imperatives of the state were more important than profits, says Tobin. Quote, it's a very different ball game, she said. Yeah, and that's why they need all kinds of tariffs imposed on them because of these grand schemes of subsidization that give them an unfair advantage over Western companies. So they'll lie about how much they give. I think that's probably enough of that picture there. But go ahead and check that out. That's actually Newsweek, and that's just from last week. Yeah, like I said, it's a game of Go. They're using absolutely everything they have their fingers into in an attempt to dominate the West without firing a shot. Here's Danielle Smith, and she says, Minister Rebecca Schultz is clear, reasonable, and affirm Alberta's approach to affordable and reliable electrical grid. So this is one of the things that I think is part of the art of war strategy here is, to whatever weakens the West is true, and to freeze us out and starve us by attacking the energy industry. And here is one of our ministers taking a stand. It seems like Alberta is standing up to this stuff. It is going to take, I think, provincial and local politicians and authorities speaking out and standing up to the imposition of these policies that weaken us as a society by the federal government, which appears to have been captured by the Chinese Communist Party. So here we go.
Earlier today, the federal government released the draft clean electricity regulations. We will be doing detailed analysis in the months ahead. However, one thing is clear. The draft regulations are unconstitutional, irresponsible, unrealistic, and would make life less affordable for Albertans and Canadians. They will not be implemented in our province, period. They can't. We are beginning our talks with the federal government, and if we can't get alignment, Alberta will chart its own path to ensure we have reliable and affordable electricity for the people we serve. This means making sure we have adequate natural gas baseload and incentivizing CCUS abated natural gas generation, small modular reactors, hydrogen, and a sustainable amount of wind, solar, and other renewables to drive down electricity costs. We need to be realistic. The world is going to need a lot more electricity. Estimates indicate the power demand could double between now and 2050, and Canada's generation capacity will need to be up to 3 times larger than it is right now. Instead, we've seen the federal government put ideology before common sense, affordability, and reliability once again. What was released today is a bait and switch, pretending to allow natural gas to continue while creating conditions where plants are forced to power down. In the dead of winter or the middle of summer, Albertans need natural gas to keep our grid running, keep families from freezing, to turn the lights on, to run air conditioning and businesses operating. Can you imagine being a parent of young children, having to ration power and not being able to turn on your light switches in the middle of the night in the middle of winter? We can achieve our environmental goals in a much more realistic way that doesn't jeopardize jobs, our economy, or put Albertans at risk.
Right on. Okay. Here is Blacklock's reporter, and this is from the 11th of August, so that's about a week ago. It says, no Fed digital ID, digital currency here. Government issue digital currency is unnecessary and would only be feasible if most Canadians asked for it, the Bank of Canada said yesterday. Consumers would have to, quote, drive its use, close quote, said a bank report. Quote, acceptance and use of a central bank digital currency could be challenging, close quote. Yeah, and that's entirely because, I think that the Conservative Party of Canada is basically plagiarizing Maxime Bernier's platform at this point. He's been the one that's kind of been driving this conversation. As he said during an interview with me, it's not necessarily about winning. It's not the will to power that drives them. It's about having the conversation, providing representation, moving the Overton window. And I think we're starting to see the institutions respond to a lot of, what the press is calling conspiracy theories. And it's getting harder and harder for them to do to implement this agenda because of the level of awareness out there now. So here is Lily, and he's saying Trudeau's net zero regs push unnecessary fight with provinces. Trudeau government's heavy-handed approach will lead to court challenges and Western alienation. The feds announced their plan to great fanfare on Thursday in Toronto, promising it will make the planet cleaner, lower your bills, and create thousands of jobs in the process. Yeah, okay, whatever. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Trudeau's Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, was quick to point out that already 84% of Canada's electricity is created by clean sources, such as hydroelectric system or nuclear or wind. That dependency on what are now considered clean or good sources and those that are not is not even across the country. In Manitoba, 97% of electricity come from hydro. In Quebec, it's almost 95%, and in British Columbia, it's close to 90%. Other provinces don't have the ability to tap into water dams to generate power, which is why Nova Scotia generates 52% of their energy from coal, Saskatchewan generates 39% from coal, and Alberta's main source, generating 60% of electricity, is natural gas. These provinces are moving to clean up their grids already, with Saskatchewan operating a massive carbon capture and storage facility at the Boundary Dam coal plant, and Alberta is investing heavily in solar. Meeting the federal targets, though, will be difficult, which is why the various provinces are pushing back. Quote, Trudeau's net zero electricity regulations are unaffordable, unrealistic, and unconstitutional, close quote, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe said in a statement. Quote, they will drive electricity rates through the roof and leave Saskatchewan with an unreliable power supply. I think that's the point. That's what they want. Alberta's Daniel Smith was a bit more direct. Quote, we're going to assert our rights under the Constitution to tell them to pound sand, close quote, Smith told the Calgary Sun's Rick Bell in an exclusive interview. Like Moe, Smith said the federal plan would result in an unreliable electricity grid, one that would potentially leave people freezing in the dark in harsh winter months. Quote, we are not going to harm Albertans because we're trying to achieve some target pulled out of the sky by someone who doesn't even understand the electricity grid in Alberta. We have to get real here, close quote, Smith said. Both premiers are promising to challenge any regulations directing how they run their electrical systems in court, claiming constitutional jurisdiction. On the plain reading of the Constitution, it would appear both Smith and Moe would be correct. The wording is clear. Quote, in each province, the legislature may exclusively make laws in relation to development, conservation, and management of sites and facilities in the province for the generation and production of electrical energy, close quote. The Constitution reads at section 92C. That said, courts have long ruled that the environment, which is the justification for making these moves, is a shared jurisdiction. The courts have also been more deferential to federal attempts to expand their power than provincial attempts to protect their ability to legislate as they see fit. There is also the possibility that the feds could use their criminal code powers to make certain forms of energy illegal. While that may seem like a stretch, they've stretched before and been aided by the courts. Of course, to avoid this fight, the federal government could have worked with the provinces, as they said they would shortly before announcing their plan to move ahead with the controversial regulations. Working with Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Nova Scotia, though, would require common sense and compromise, two things Guilbeault doesn't believe in. The main problem with Trudeau's environment minister is that he has the outlook of a religious zealot. He's not trying to implement policy so much as to convert you to his secular green religion, and nothing will stand in his way. That's why he should have been shifted during the cabinet shuffle 2 weeks ago. Instead, we'll be treated to another round of court battles, divisive rhetoric, and alienating one part of the country for the sake of another. Yep. Well done, Brian Lilly, even though he is kind of a controlled opposition. Yeah, that's where I think they're going with that. Little update here again from Blacklocks. They're saying won't hear church appeals. So this is the Supreme Court of Canada yesterday declined to hear the petitions from church groups challenging pandemic bans on in-person worship. No reason was given. Quote, "We are disappointed," close quote, said Marty Moore of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms that acted as counsel in the two cases. Quote, "Prohibiting in-person worship is not a matter of national importance." Yeah, okay. We still have some challenges there, especially as it pertains to the court system. They've been stacking the courts for years with liberal donors and whatnot, and so yeah, this is what ideological capture looks like. They don't give a damn about the concerns of Canadians or the kind of oppression we've all been under for the last several years. It's more about obedience these days. And here's another one from Blacklocks. Chrystia Freakland says, we did pretty well. Finance Minister Chrystia Freakland yesterday boasted, quote, "Canada did pretty well," close quote, on COVID though death rates were higher than in Australia, South Korea, Norway, and other industrialized countries. A proposal to conduct an inquiry into Cabinet's pandemic management is currently stalled in the Commons Health Committee. Quote, "Of course, we could learn lessons about how to do better," close quote. Yeah, no kidding. They're stalling every inquiry, every committee. I don't think we have any traction back under the committee to look into what happened with the CCP operatives being escorted out of our level 4 biosecurity lab in Winnipeg by the RCMP. That was why they called the 2021 election, in my assessment, was to dissolve that committee so we couldn't know just how bad things really are with respect to CCP infiltration into our institutions in Canada. And here's another one that says, "Lobbyists flock to Stampede." Ottawa and Toronto lobbyists boosted attendance at the Prime Minister's annual Calgary Stampede fundraiser record show. A fifth of donors to the Laurier Club event were Ontario lobbyists and political aides. Quote, "Thousands of Canadians are chipping in." So it's all manufactured consent. They're all a bunch of they're all loyalists, right? That want to control the narrative and manufacture that consent. And Darlene is saying, attacking religion still. Most religion groups are starting to gather. It is beautiful to see. Yes, it is beautiful to see. I really enjoyed seeing Muslims and Christians banding together around our shared interest of protecting children from groomers in the anti-gender ideology protest recently there in Ottawa. It was pretty fantastic to see. All right, here is some good news coming out of the Supreme Court. This is with respect to a father in BC who was trying to protect his daughter from being sexually butchered on the altar of wokeness to the gods of boomer self-righteousness in the form of a biomedical gender transition. He seems to have gotten a favorable decision finally from the Supreme Court of BC. So here we go.
Whose daughter, when she was in grade 7, was shown a video by her teachers featuring a transgender character, and she started thinking, I also want to cut my hair short. I also want to identify as a boy, just like the character in that video. The teachers entertained this. They allowed her to change her name. They allowed her to change her pronouns. They suggested she go get some counseling, and the counselor suggested she go talk to a doctor. The doctor suggested she starts transitioning. All of this happened unbeknownst to this father. So obviously he's royally upset. The courts ended up saying he's not allowed to misgender his daughter. He's not allowed to use the incorrect pronouns. He can't use her so-called dead name. And he's not allowed to talk to the press about any of this. A so-called gag order was placed on this. Now, obviously, with this being insanely tyrannical, he didn't do any of these things, ended up spending 69 days in jail for that. And he was also facing a fine of upwards of $30,000. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, the judge just decided that he has won his case. He won his appeal. All right, guys, we're here with the man who's not supposed to be named after a huge victory. All right, this has been almost 5 years in the making, all culminating into this final day, this final decision. Tell us, what did the judge determine today? Because this sounds like some huge breaking good news.
You know, after a whole lot of spectacular disaster losses over the last 5 years, we got a huge win. We end on a huge win. You know, everything I could have, hoped for today, we got from the BC Court of Appeal here. And, time served. So the 6-month sentence, what's left of it, I'm exonerated from at this point. The $30,000 fine removed. I'm walking out of here with a to end, what I would call this long saga with a huge win. And I hope parents and, this is important for everybody here because, I think the tide is changing. I've said it. I didn't know how it was going to reflect in what was going to happen today. And I can't say with certainty that was what it was, but I hope this gives everybody some courage and some hope, right? And definitely encouragement because this is, this is huge. I mean, compared to where things were, who would have guessed the political climate to get a win like this about breaking gag orders and publication bans and getting the word out because I think most people didn't even believe that things were this crazy. It was honestly people, they needed to know the truth and I was sitting on it and I was told I couldn't tell anybody. And to me, that was unacceptable at the time. And, I paid a price. I did. As I said, 69 days in jail and I guess if he's had today, I guess you can say 70.
What was that like in the battle? Because you just won in such a huge victory when they had their side stacked.
Yeah, there were times, I was up against, before this became a criminal case, which literally pitted me up directly against the Attorney General and the government. There was 50 lawyers involved on the other side at times. It was insane. I took on everybody that literally had a hand in what happened to my child, literally everybody that played a role. And that brought 50, and these aren't just your regular lawyers. A lot of them are specific trans activist lawyers. The whole mob. I took on the whole mob with, just a couple guys.
So there you go. One person can make a difference, folks. This is a big win, I think. For the forces of good in all of this. This is the sickest thing going on right now is the biomedical transitioning of children. They're just sexually butchering them into permanent medical patients to provide big pharma with livestock for profit. So that's a good sign that, like you said, the tide is turning. People are waking up to this, and a couple of the comments on this seem to be that a lot of people don't realize just how far gone things are in the education system right now. That is true, but at the same time, like he says, the tide is turning. People are waking up, and the courts are finally starting to issue some favorable decisions to protect children from this that might allow us to protect our own children. And speaking of the transgender, this is Duchess of Lois of Alberta. This is somebody who was born male and transitioned to female and woke up from the surgery to immediately regret it and is calling out a lot of this big pharma tyranny and exploitation And she's quite good on Twitter. I'm not sure if it's he or she at this point, but this is somebody that's going to have to remain on the hormones for the rest of their life because they've been butchered. And she's pretty good on Twitter. I like this person. And I reached out to them to see if they would come on the podcast for an interview. I'd love to hear what they have to say. And these are the people that we need to be empowering right now is the detransitioners. I talk about the detransitioners quite a bit. They were banned from Reddit there a few years back. So they've been terribly abused and oppressed and silenced. But here is a word from Lois. Oh, and Lois is Indigenous as well. So.
Holy shit, I was just standing here all indigenously and everything. Saw a bear run from that corner to that corner real fast. Had the flash of my Indian status card. I was like, hold up, buddy. You're on the reserve. And then he picked up speed. Probably thought, holy shit, they're going to make me into bear grease. Take my claws and make a necklace. And take my fur and make a second skin. Holy shit, that thing just booked it. Holy shit.
All right. Yeah. So Lois is pretty funny, has a pretty good sense of humor. This is the person who is applying for MAID. Okay. They've been biomedically transitioned. Their life has been ruined. And instead of spending the rest of their life on the pharmaceuticals, they're applying for MAID. And I think the MAID is being denied. But it's just a terribly sad state of affairs for this poor individual that they've been subjected to this sickness in the way that they have. But it's nice to see them maintain a sense of humor and all of this. I thought that was a pretty funny video, actually. I had to flash out my Indian status card, get the bear running away because they're afraid they're going to be made into a necklace. That's pretty funny. Okay, I didn't do the usual drop off of YouTube to talk about the science today, but yeah, I'll go ahead and round things out with the plug the Veterans for Freedom website here, especially our support fund. So you can subscribe to our newsletter, clicking on this button. Clicking on this button. If you're a veteran, you can join Veterans for Freedom by clicking on this button. And you know, some people I think are probably a little bit frustrated with their applications right now because we had a problem with the old website and we may have lost some of that data when we transitioned over to this website. But please, guys, stay on it. We're filling the ranks. We got over 3,000 members at this point. So yeah, please continue to file your applications, or if you haven't heard anything back, it might be a good idea to refile through here because we've encountered some difficulties in that regard. But yeah, we're looking to get everybody on board, and let's get the veteran community, you know, the genuine veterans who actually embody the principles that they've been paying lip service to. They're not just paying lip service to them their entire lives, of you know, human dignity and human liberty. So please, if you're one of those veterans, come on out here and hit this join button, and the support fund. So if you want to contribute to the support fund, you just click on, if you want to support Veterans for Freedom financially, that is, you click on the support here, and you have the option to donate to V4F itself. This is to help us with our monthly expenses, pays for my StreamYard account and the website, a lot of things like that. We're an official not-for-profit, so all the books are transparent, and we're able to show where all these transactions go, where we spend all the money, that kind of thing. So we'd really appreciate your support and keeping the lights on here at Veterans for Freedom. And also the support fund. This is to help Canadians. This is something we've established to help Canadians who are suffering under this tyranny. And as we can see, here are the winners from the last month's support fund donations. Everybody who donates gets a chance to vote on where their contributions go. Last month we had Saba Vizi up there to get one. He was the trucker who was Romanian born, lives in Canada, and got the shit beat out of him by the cops at the trucker convoy. He was on Fox News and all kinds of stuff. And of course, he's engaged in all kinds of legal battles now, and he's going to need approximately $20,000 to pay for his legal fees. Pat King was, well, he's probably the most infamous of the the convoy supporters, and he's going to be on the program tomorrow. I'm looking forward to talking with Pat about his experience, because he was jailed for quite a while and banned from social media. Looks like he's back on social media now. So that's a sign that things are turning. But he's still locked out of his own accounts, and he needs about $90,000, it looks like, for his legal defense. The winner from last month was the family of Garnett Harper. Garnett passed away on May 22nd, 2023, leaving behind his wife of 12 years and their 5 children. He was in need of a kidney transplant, which he was denied due to his vaccination status. Garnett's referral to a transplant center was denied, meaning he wasn't even considered for a place on the organ donation list. Garnett never got to commence his home dialysis. He died from a bleeding stroke in the middle of the night. Strokes are common among the leading causes of death for people on long-term dialysis, as the treatment is very hard on your cardiovascular system. So, our last month's donations went to his family that he left behind. And also, you'll have the option to send 10% of your donation to Operation Pegasus Foundation. Their mission is to relieve conditions related to operational stress in order to build resiliency by providing recreational challenges to support the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of veterans, serving members, and first responders. So all very worthy causes, and you can sign up here by clicking one of these buttons for anything from $5 to $1,000 per month. You can set up your on your credit card, but if you don't want to use a credit card, use fund@veteransforfreedom.ca, or send your e-transfer to fund@veteransforfreedom.ca with your auto deposit enabled. But if you're not able to enable your auto deposit, then please use the password fund4freedom, fund for freedom with the number 4 in there. Okay, and that brings us all the way back to Sun Tzu from The Art of War, 5th century BC. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Yeah, I think that's what we're seeing. Is they're sowing chaos, right? That is the idea. This is what I've been talking about a lot: is sowing chaos, so that they can be the ones to implement the solutions, probably to the detriment of Canadians who are living here, Americans who are living in the States, the West more broadly. So that seems to be the battle strategy, and it's everything but a kinetic war. But I think that historians are going to look back at the present moment and say that we were already in World War III. Okay, that does it for me today. And let's throw to a couple of comments before I sign off. Patty is saying, I got my V4F shirt and vehicle sticker, smiley face, at book signing of Tamara Vatamanuk. Okay, right on. Thanks a lot for your support. I really appreciate it. And Vikram is saying, yes, we must find that opportunity. Yes, we must. I think we need to do the same. We're seeing there's a lot of crisis here, but there's also a lot of opportunity. The foreign agent registry thing is something that I was surprised to learn we didn't even have here in Canada. So at least there's a lot of attention around that. And I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that the world is a dangerous place. Like even a few years ago, that would have been a little bit too platitudinous for me to say, but a lot of people seem to be just saying, like, if you express any concerns about the dangers in the world, that you're somehow xenophobic. So that's I think the result of a years-long campaign of propaganda and gaslighting to make the West think that we're all racist, when in fact we're the least racist society that has ever existed. And nobody else even really cares about racism. They don't really see it as being a bad thing. That's true not just of the Chinese, but of the Japanese as well. If you go to Tokyo, you'll see signs up in coffee shops that say no whites allowed or Japanese only, this kind of thing. So they're unabashedly racist, and they probably think that it's funny that we even consider racism to be a bad thing. And so they just gaslight the hell out of us to silence any opposition to their agenda of global dominance. And Colleen is saying, thank you so much for all of your hard work, Jeff. So appreciate it. Yes, thank you for always being with me, Colleen. It's like I keep saying, I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this kind of thing. And I have some court battles coming up myself. I don't think I'm going to do a live on Wednesday because I'm going to be in court that day. That's for a mask violation that I got prior to the trucker convoy. And of course, I am challenging the mandates. I don't think anybody in Nova Scotia has really done that all the way. There are a couple of people actually. And Friday, I'm going to be bringing friend of the show here, William, back on to talk about his own application for judicial review of the mandates. I filed something myself in terms of judicial review, constitutional challenge, prior to lawyering up, because I thought I was going to be all on my own, but I did find a Nova Scotian lawyer, I think the only one who's going to be helping me with that. So I'm pretty stoked to have my day in court. And Darlene is saying, great live, Jeff. Always more information gathered. Have a wonderful day, folks, and giving us the hearts. Have a wonderful day yourself, and thanks for being with us. And Debbie is saying thank you. And Metzislav says, great show, Jeff. Everyone take care and God bless. Yes, take care, everybody. And Jane is saying thank you, Jeff. Michael says, a great show. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I appreciate you guys being with me always. And Jane says, nailing it. I'm glad you guys think so. It's always a bit chaotic for me in the morning trying to line everything up for you guys. But I think we're definitely over the target with a lot of this stuff. I think we're definitely cutting through a lot of the propaganda and raising some awareness out there as to what's really going on in the world. So, and Cindy says, oh shit, forgot to sign out LMFA. Bye, y'all. Okay. Right on. Cindy, thanks for always being with us. She is our most faithful of all watchers. And like I said, I'm having a good time reading the book that she sent me there, Kyle Brown's book, Scapegoat, How the Army Betrayed Kyle Brown. But it wasn't the Army that betrayed Kyle Brown. It was the Boomer generation. And Vikram is saying, thanks to the whole crew. Todd is saying, true news. And Jane is saying, absolutely nailing it, Jeff. Very good. Okay, well, glad, guys. I'm glad you guys think so. And please spread the word, share this out. Let's get the word out here. Tune more people into the programming here. Allie's dad over on Rumble is saying, cheers, Jeff. Cheers to you, Allie's dad. And yeah, thanks a lot, guys. And Papa Squirrel is saying, great show. Thank you, Sergeant Major. Yeah, it's my pleasure, guys. And I really appreciate you guys tuning in every day. And the words of support are very helpful. So I appreciate you guys. And until next time, stay frosty and stay safe out there.